Chapter 1. They say pain makes you stronger, but sometimes it just makes you numb. I guess I'm somewhere in between. In between life and death. My story is like most stories. But how did it all happen? And how is it all gonna end? The morning air was crisp, carrying the faintest hint of dew and pine, but I barely noticed it. My legs moved mechanically through the woods, my hands buried deep in the pockets of my worn jacket. The forest had always been my escape, a place where the towering trees whispered ancient secrets, and the ground beneath my feet felt solid, dependable. Unlike people, and I mean it with scorn, I stopped at my favorite spot, a small clearing where the sunlight spilled like liquid gold between the branches. It was beautiful, but even beauty felt hollow now. It felt like nothing to me. I lowered myself to the ground, knees brushing against the damp grass, and pulled out my journal. My fingers trembled slightly as I flipped to a blank page. The words came slowly at first, hesitant, like they were afraid of being seen or scared of what I will use them for. 'Cause I had pain, real pain, in my heart, and I needed to let it out. Day 62 without Ben. I should be over this by now. Shouldn't I? But every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Not the face of the boy who kissed me under the moonlight, but the face of the man who told me he'd found someone else. What a way to leave. What are the worst ways a man can break up with you? A man that you planned your life with. Worst case to all this, a human. He didn't even have the decency to make it hurt less. Just told me and walked away. I guess that's what you do when you never really cared to begin with. I paused, the pen hovering above the page, and exhaled shakily. Am I pathetic for still writing about him? Maybe. But who else do I have? My parents. They're just ghosts now, faces I'm starting to forget. I lost them when I was young. I barely got a chance to experience family. My aunts. Sure, they took me in, but I was just another mouth to feed. They didn't hug me when I cried or tuck me in at night. They didn't love me. Not really. My grip on the pen tightened as a sharp, familiar ache settled in my chest. I'd been alone for so long, I thought I'd gotten used to it. And then Ben came along. When I met him, I thought the universe was finally cutting me some slack. He was charming, wild, and everything my broken little heart had been craving. He made me feel seen. For the first time in forever, I felt like I mattered. But now I realized I was just a placeholder, a pit stop on his way to something, someone better. But now, thinking about it, maybe there were others. Other girls while he was with me. I know I sound crazy, but you can't blame me. I was hurt, and I clawed at every possibility, looking for reasons to hate him more, so I could get over him and go on with my life. So here I am again, talking to a piece of paper like it's my therapist. I wonder if trees get tired of hearing my sob story. Maybe that's why the forest feels quieter lately. Even it's over me. I snapped the journal shut and leaned back, letting the sunlight warm my face. My wolf stirred restlessly inside me, a low, persistent hum in the back of my mind. She wanted to run, to hunt, to do something other than sit here wallowing in self-pity. But I wasn't ready to let her out. Not yet. You know when you've bonded with someone, and then they feel every hurt you feel? Yes, that was my wolf, and if I let it out, maybe I would show rage and cause damage. And that creates a whole complexity for me. And when I say for me, trust me, I needed to be good and not get into any trouble around here. A lot of thoughts ran through my mind. One very prevalent. You're not pathetic, a voice whispered from within, soft and almost pleading. My wolf rarely spoke, but when she did, it was hard to ignore her. She had a way of cutting through my self-doubt, even when I didn't want her to. Easy for you to say, I muttered under my breath. You don't have a broken heart. Kinda. It did and didn't at the same time. To many other questions I brought forth, the forest offered no reply, just the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds wash over me. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to be free of this heaviness, to laugh without it catching in my throat or smile without it feeling like a lie. But the moment was fleeting. Memories of my parents crept in uninvited. I could still see their faces, glimpses, as the edges were starting to blur. My mother's laughter, warm and rich like honey. My father's strong hands lifting me onto his shoulders. They were my world, and then one day they were gone. An accident, they said. Wrong place, wrong time. as if that made it easier to swallow, as if knowing it wasn't their fault would somehow fill the gaping hole they left behind. After their deaths, I bounced between my aunts like a bad penny. None of them wanted me. Not really. I was just an obligation, a reminder of the sister they'd lost. I learned quickly not to expect hugs or bedtime stories or I love yous. I became self-sufficient, quiet, and invisible, everything a good orphan should be. And then came Ben. I know I have said this a couple of times, but I really want you to see the picture here. And feel my pain. 'Cause why me? Ben was like a wildfire, burning bright and fast, and for a while I let myself get consumed. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd found a home in him. But wildfires don't last. They burn out, leaving nothing but ash. Though this fire lasted for 2 good years. I thought losing my parents was the worst thing that could happen to me. But at least they didn't choose to leave. Ben did. A sharp crack of a branch pulled me from my thoughts. My head snapped up, my wolf bristling instantly. Someone was nearby. I scanned the trees, my senses on high alert. The forest had been safe for as long as I could remember, but with the rogue shifters causing trouble lately, you could never be too careful. "Hello," I called out, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. No answer. I stood slowly, tucking the journal into my jacket. My eyes darted from shadow to shadow, my ears straining for any sound that didn't belong. A low growl escaped me unbidden. Whoever was out there better have a damn good reason for sneaking up on me. A figure stepped out from behind a tree, and my breath caught. For a split second I thought it was Ben. The same dark hair, the same cocky smirk. But as he moved closer, I realized it wasn't him. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by annoyance. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice sharp. "And why are you creeping around like some kind of stalker?" The man raised his hands in mock surrender, his grin widening. "Easy there, sweetheart. I'm not here to hurt you. Just passing through." "Passing through," I repeated, narrowing my eyes. "This is packed territory. You've got about 5 seconds to explain yourself before I call for backup." He chuckled, the sound low and unsettling. "Relax. I'm not a rogue if that's what you're worried about." "Then what are you?" I asked, taking a step closer. My wolf growled again, louder this time, but the man didn't seem fazed. "Let's just say I'm someone who's interested in keeping an eye on things around here," he said cryptically. "And you, Sage, you're quite the interesting one, aren't you?" My blood ran cold at the sound of my name. I'd never seen this man before in my life, and yet he spoke as if he knew me. My wolf snarled, ready to pounce, but something about the way he looked at me, like he was sizing me up, calculating, made me hesitate. "How do you know my name?" I demanded, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to stay composed. The man tilted his head, his grin fading into something darker. "Let's just say I've been watching. You come here often, and weirdly you call your name when you write. And that's weirdly cute." Before I could respond, he turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. I really do not want no complications to my already complicated world, and I hope I never get to see this man. Chapter 2. Being an alpha is like carrying the world on your shoulders. Every smile, every command, every decision, it's all for them. But sometimes I wonder who will carry me. The morning sun bathed the village in a golden light, illuminating the cobblestone streets where shifters bustled about their daily routines. The scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the earthy aroma of the woods that bordered the pack's territory. The air hummed with life, and at the center of it all was Noah, walking down the main street. Noah exuded an effortless confidence. His tall frame, broad shoulders, and easy smile commanded attention without demanding it. He didn't have to say much. His presence alone spoke volume. Women paused mid-conversation as he passed, their cheeks flushing at the simple act of him nodding and saying, "Good morning." Some giggled, others whispered, but all of them watched him walk by with admiration in their eyes. Noah, of course, noticed. He always did, but he never let it go to his head. A polite nod here, a kind smile there, it was enough. He wasn't oblivious to the attention. He just had more pressing matters on his mind. As he reached the market square, a group of children playing tag spotted him and immediately abandoned their game to race toward him. "Alpha Noah," a small boy shouted, his voice filled with excitement. Noah crouched as they swarmed him, ruffling the hair of the boy who reached him first. "What's this? A pack of wild pups taking over my streets." The children laughed, their faces lighting up as they chattered about their games and how they planned to win the upcoming festival competition. Noah listened, genuinely interested, even though his mind was preoccupied with the day's responsibilities. A little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Alpha, are you really coming to watch us play at the festival?" Noah's smile softened. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. You keep practicing, all right?" The children cheered and ran off, their laughter echoing through the square. Noah straightened, his gaze following them for a moment. Interactions like these reminded him why he did what he did. The pack wasn't just his responsibility, it was his family. And every decision he made was for them. As he continued walking, an elderly woman carrying a heavy basket crossed his path. Without hesitation, Noah stepped forward, gently taking the basket from her hands. "Let me help you with that, Mrs. Calder," he said, his tone warm. The woman smiled up at him, her face lined with years of wisdom and kindness. "Thank you, Alpha. You're too good to us." "It's my job," Noah replied simply, carrying the basket to her stall. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. It wasn't just about duty, it was about love. He cared deeply for every member of his pack, from the youngest pup to the oldest elder. They were his people, and he would do anything to protect them. But even an alpha has his own burdens to bear. Later that afternoon, Noah stood on the porch of the pack house, gazing out at the horizon. The sprawling landscape stretched before him, a patchwork of forests and fields that seemed to go on forever. It was beautiful, serene, a stark contrast to the restlessness he felt inside. His wolf stirred, a low hum of energy thrumming through his mind. "She's out there," the wolf whispered, a voice both calming and insistent. Noah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know," he murmured aloud. "But when? How long do we have to wait?" The wolf didn't answer. It rarely did when it came to this topic. For years, Noah had trusted his wolf's instincts, leaning on its strength and guidance to lead the pack. But when it came to finding his fated mate, there was no aching void, no desperate longing. Just a quiet certainty that she existed and that fate would bring them together when the time was right. "You'll know her when you see her," his wolf had told him once. "You won't need to ask. You'll just know." And Noah believed that, but that didn't mean it wasn't frustrating. Every day, he saw couples around him, mates who had found each other and built lives together. He wasn't jealous, not exactly. He was happy for them, but it was a bittersweet happiness, tinged with the nagging question of when it would be his turn. He turned and walked inside, the heavy oak doors creaking shut behind him. The pack house was bustling with activity as always. Wolves came and went, discussing patrol schedules, resource distribution, and preparations for the upcoming festival. Noah moved among them, offering guidance where needed, settling disputes, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. But even as he immersed himself in his duties, part of his mind lingered on the thought of his mate. Who was she? Where was she? Would she understand the weight he carried as alpha? Would she see him not just as a leader, but as a man? You see, recently one of his close beta friends had just been mated, and this just made he long for it. Jack, his good friend, told him of how happy he is and how his wolf has come to life after the mating ritual. How it feels like his wolf had been given a renewed energy and vigor. And he wondered when he would find this and feel all these. These questions swirled in his mind as the day wore on. By the time the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Noah found himself back on the porch, staring out at the horizon once more. "You'll know her when you see her," his wolf repeated, its tone unshakable. Noah exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "All right, fate," he murmured, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I'm trusting you. Don't let me down." Chapter 3. The forest has always been my sanctuary, but that day, it became my battleground. And just when I thought it would also be my grave, he appeared. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and damp earth. The forest was unusually quiet that day, as if the birds and small creatures could sense something was amiss. I'd ventured farther than usual, drawn by the need for solitude and maybe a little danger. Being alone wasn't just a habit anymore. It was a shield, a way to protect myself from everything that hurt. I didn't plan to stay out long, just enough to clear my head. The towering trees and the soft crunch of leaves beneath my boots were the only things grounding me. But something was off. My wolf stirred uneasily inside me, her instincts sharper than my own. "Something's wrong," she murmured. I slowed my pace, my senses sharpening. The air felt heavier here, laced with an unfamiliar scent. It was wild and feral, tinged with aggression. Rogue shifters. I froze, my heart pounding. The stories of rogue attacks had been spreading through the pack for weeks. They were exiles, wolves who had been cast out from their own packs, now banding together to steal, destroy, and destabilize. And I just walked straight into their territory. The first growl came from my left, low and menacing. My head snapped toward the sound, and I caught a glimpse of yellow eyes gleaming. Another growl echoed from behind me, then another to my right. They were circling me. "Run," my wolf urged. But I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the ground. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't fear that paralyzed me, it was anger. After everything I'd been through, was this how it was going to end? Alone, ambushed in the forest by a group of outcast wolves? The first rogue lunged, and instinct took over. I shifted midair, my wolf bursting forth with a snarl. We collided, rolling through the underbrush in a flurry of claws and teeth. I felt the sharp sting of claws raking my side, but I didn't stop. I fought with everything I had, but there were too many of them. A second wolf tackled me, pinning me to the ground. I snapped at him, my teeth grazing his shoulder, but he didn't budge. Another one joined, his jaws closing around my hind leg. Pain shot through me, and I howled in agony. This is it, I thought bitterly. This is how it ends. And then, like a bolt of lightning, he appeared. A massive black wolf barreled into the fray, a growl so powerful it seemed to shake the earth. The rogues hesitated, their confidence wavering as they recognized the alpha. But hesitation wasn't enough to save them. Noah tore into them with a ferocity I'd never seen, his movements swift and precise. One rogue tried to run, but Noah was faster. He caught the wolf by the neck, tossing him into a tree with a sickening crack. Another rogue lunged, but Noah was ready, his claws raking across the wolf's chest and sending him crashing to the ground. The remaining rogues scattered, their snarls turning to whimpers as they disappeared into the forest. Noah shifted back, standing tall and unyielding, his chest heaving as he watched them flee. His dark hair was tousled, his sharp eyes scanning the area for any remaining threats. And then, his gaze fell on me. I was still in wolf form, my injured leg trembling as I tried to stand. He approached slowly, his expression softening as he knelt beside me. "Sage," he said, his voice low and steady. "It's okay. You're safe now." Something in his tone broke through my defenses, and I shifted back, collapsing into his arms. His warmth enveloped me, a stark contrast to the cold fear that had gripped me moments before. How did you know I was here?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer right away. His eyes, deep and unyielding, seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken words. And then, he said something that sent a shiver down my spine. "I felt something," he murmured. "I felt that you needed me." Earlier that day Noah had been passing through the town like he usually does, where he saw a magician that beckoned on him to come. He resisted at first, but as the magician said, "You will find what you seek," he obliged, and there the magician told him a few things and ended with, "Save a life to save your life," then spraying a powder that looked like fairy dust towards his face. As we were still in the forest and I in his hands, his wolf stirred within him, a powerful force that seemed to resonate with something inside me. For a moment, it was as if the world had narrowed to just the two of us. My wolf, battered but still strong, stirred in recognition. "He's ours," she whispered, her voice filled with certainty. But Noah pulled back, his jaw tightening. Whatever he'd felt, whatever his wolf had revealed to him, he wasn't ready to share it. "Not yet. You need to get back to the pack house," he said, his tone firm. "You're hurt." I wanted to protest, to tell him I could take care of myself, but the pain in my leg and the exhaustion in my body said otherwise. Reluctantly, I nodded, allowing him to help me stand. As we made our way back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. There was a tension, a connection, that hadn't been there before. And though Noah remained silent, I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, as if he was seeing me in a way he never had before. He saved me, but it wasn't just my life he saved. It was something deeper, something I didn't fully understand yet. And maybe, just maybe, it was something worth fighting for. Chapter 4. Sometimes, the strongest bonds are forged in the quiet moments, the ones no one else sees but leave an imprint on your soul. Joan was the kind of person you noticed immediately, not because she sought attention, but because she carried herself with a quiet confidence that demanded respect. A skilled warrior, she came from a family known for their loyalty and strength, traits she embodied in everything she did. Her reputation in the pack was solid, dependable, fierce, and unwavering in her dedication to protecting their community. But there was another side to Joan, one that most people didn't see. Beneath the steely exterior was a heart as big as the forest they called home. She wasn't one for grand gestures or flowery words, but when she saw someone in need, she didn't hesitate to step in. That was how she found me. It was a few weeks after Ben had left. I was sitting by the river, trying to drown out the ache in my chest with the sound of rushing water. I thought I was alone, but Joan appeared out of nowhere, her sharp gaze softening when she saw the tears I hadn't realized were streaming down my face. She didn't ask what was wrong or offer hollow platitudes. Instead, she sat beside me, silent and steady, her presence grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. After what felt like hours, she finally spoke. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but if you ever do, I'm here." It was such a simple thing, but it meant the world to me. From that day on, Joan became my anchor. She didn't push me to heal or force me to move on. She just stayed, and slowly, piece by piece, I started to rebuild myself with her by my side. Joan's friendship with Noah was a different story entirely. The two of them had been inseparable for years, their bond rooted in shared experiences and a mutual respect that went deeper than words. It all started with a rock, not just any rock, but a small, smooth stone with a faint blue sheen that Noah's father had given him before he died. Noah had carried that rock with him everywhere, a tangible reminder of his father's wisdom and strength. But one day, during a skirmish with a rival pack, it had slipped from his pocket. He hadn't realized it was missing until much later, and by then he assumed it was gone forever. Joan had found it a week later while patrolling the forest. She recognized it immediately, having seen Noah fiddling with it countless times during pack meetings. When she handed it back to him, his expression was one she'd never forget, a mix of gratitude, relief, and something unspoken that cemented their friendship in that moment. "Don't go losing this again," she had teased, grinning. "Next time, I might not be around to save your sentimental ass." From then on, the two were a team. Whether it was sparring in the training grounds, strategizing for the pack, or sharing a drink after a long day, Joan and Noah had each other's backs. Their dynamic was easy and unpretentious, built on a foundation of trust and an endless supply of good-natured ribbing. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Joan and Noah sat on the porch of the pack house, nursing cold drinks and watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and pine, and the sound of crickets filled the silence between them. "You're quieter than usual," Joan said, breaking the stillness. "What's on your mind?" Noah sighed, leaning back against the railing. "Just thinking about the pack." Joan raised an eyebrow in sage, a knowing smirk tugging at her lips. "Ah, the mysterious sage. You know you're not as subtle as you think. Half the pack's already buzzing about how you look at her." Noah shot her a warning glance, but she only laughed. "Relax, Alpha. I'm not going to tell anyone. But seriously, what's stopping you?" He didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's complicated," he admitted finally. "She's been through a lot and I don't want to push her. Plus, the elders." Joan snorted. "The elders can stuff it. You're the alpha. If you want to pursue her, that's your choice. And honestly, I think she's good for you." Noah looked at her, his expression softening. "Thanks, Joan. I mean it." Joan leaned back, grinning mischievously. "Of course, if it doesn't work out and you end up old and wrinkly, I'll gladly take one for the team and mate with you. Someone has to keep you in line." Noah laughed, the sound deep and genuine. "I'll keep that in mind." As the night deepened, Joan's thoughts drifted to Sage. She'd seen the way Noah looked at her, the way his usually steady demeanor softened in her presence. And though she teased him relentlessly, she hoped with all her heart that he'd find the happiness he deserved. After all, if anyone could handle the weight of being the alpha's mate, it was Sage. Here's hoping fate knows what it's doing, Joan murmured to herself, the stars above twinkling in silent agreement. Chapter 5. Healing isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral. You think you're making progress, and then you slip back into the pain. But each time, you get a little stronger, a little braver. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. The training grounds were alive with the sound of snapping jaws, growls, and the occasional cheer of encouragement. The younger wolves were working hard, their movements sharp and eager as they practiced basic defensive maneuvers. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, trying to blend into the background. It was Joan's idea, of course. "You're too strong to keep hiding," she'd said, dragging me out of my comfort zone. "The pack needs you, Sage. And honestly, I think you need them, too." At first, I resisted. The thought of putting myself out there, of being seen after everything that had happened, made my chest tighten with anxiety. But Joan had a way of pushing me without making me feel pushed. And so here I was, pretending I wasn't shaking on the inside. A young wolf, barely more than a pup, lunged forward, her movements uncoordinated but full of determination. Her sparring partner, a boy around the same age, sidestepped easily, and she stumbled, landing hard on the ground. Before I realized what I was doing, I was stepping forward. "Try shifting your weight more to your back leg," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves clawing at me. "It'll give you better balance." The girl looked up at me, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "Really?" I nodded. "Here, let me show you." I crouched beside her, demonstrating the stance and explaining the mechanics in simple terms. Slowly, her expression shifted from uncertainty to confidence. She tried again, and this time her movements were smoother, more deliberate. When she landed a hit on her sparring partner, her grin was so bright it made my chest ache. "That was amazing," she said, her excitement contagious. "Thank you." I smiled, a small, tentative thing, but genuine. "You're welcome. Keep practicing, and you'll get even better." Joan sauntered over, her arms crossed and a smirk on her face. "Look at you, Miss Mentor. You're a natural." I rolled my eyes, but there was no heat behind it. "Don't get used to it. I'm just filling in for today." "Sure you are," Joan said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But admit it, you liked it." I didn't respond, but the truth was I had. Helping the younger wolves, seeing their enthusiasm and determination, reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. I wasn't as broken as I thought I was. There was still strength in me, even if it was buried deep. Later that afternoon, I stayed behind after the others had left, tidying up the training area. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice Noah until he spoke. "You did good today." I jumped, spinning around to face him. He was leaning against a tree, his arms crossed and a faint smile playing on his lips. His presence was steady, like the earth beneath my feet, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't a big deal," I said finally, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. Joan dragged me into it. "Maybe," Noah said, pushing off the tree and stepping closer. "But you didn't have to stay. You chose to." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I found myself unable to meet his gaze. There was something about the way he looked at me, like he saw more than just the pieces I was trying to hold together. It made me feel exposed, but not in a bad way. "The pack notices, you know," he said after a moment. "Continue like this, and you will get the respect you deserve." My throat tightened, and I swallowed hard. "I don't know about that." Noah tilted his head, his eyes soft but unwavering. "I do?" The weight of his words lingered as he turned to leave, his footsteps quiet but deliberate. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months: hope. That evening, as I sat by the fire in the pack house, Joan plopped down beside me with a sly grin. "So, Alpha Noah, huh?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "Don't start." "Oh, I'm starting," she said, nudging me with her elbow. "He was watching you like a hawk today. And don't even try to tell me you didn't notice." I shook my head, but my cheeks betrayed me, heating under her teasing gaze. "He was just being nice. That's what alphas do." Joan snorted. Sure. And I'm just being nice when I let you steal the last cookie. Face it, Sage, he likes you. I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me long after she left. Because deep down, a part of me wanted to believe she was right. And that part, it terrified me. Maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. Maybe, just maybe, there's something worth fighting for after all. Chapter 6. Power doesn't just attract loyalty, it also breeds resentment. And in a pack, resentment is a poison that can spread faster than anyone realizes. The elders of the pack gathered in the council chamber, a large, circular room at the heart of the pack house. The walls were lined with shelves holding ancient texts and relics from generations past, reminders of the weight of their history and traditions. The air inside was heavy, carrying the scent of polished wood and faint traces of incense. Noah entered the chamber, his footsteps firm but quiet. He didn't sit at the head of the table, despite being the alpha. That wasn't his style. Instead, he chose a seat near the middle, a gesture that had always endeared him to the elders. It was his way of saying, I lead with you, not above you. The elders, a mix of men and women with graying hair and sharp eyes, greeted him with polite nods. At their center was Elder Hawthorne, a shrewd and respected figure who had served the pack for decades. His voice carried the authority of someone who had seen it all, and when he spoke, people listened. Alpha Noah, Hawthorne began, his tone measured. Thank you for joining us. There are matters that require your attention. Noah inclined his head. Of course. Let's get started. The first half of the meeting was dedicated to pressing issues that had been simmering for weeks. The rogue shifters were growing bolder, their attacks more coordinated. Scouts reported sightings of their leaders rallying new recruits, and the tension at the borders was palpable. They're not just scavengers anymore, said Elder Miriam, her voice tinged with worry. They're organizing. If we don't act soon, they could become a real threat. Noah nodded, his jaw tightening. We've already increased patrols along the borders. I've also ordered more supplies for the fighters. But you're right, we need a strategy that goes beyond defense. I'll consult with the betas and put together a plan to root them out before they gain more ground. The elders murmured their approval, though their expressions remained tense. The rogue problem wasn't just a matter of territory. It was a challenge to the pack's strength and stability. And if there was one thing the elders valued above all else, it was stability. The conversation shifted to other matters: resource allocation, preparations for the upcoming festival, and the training of the younger wolves. Noah listened intently, offering his input where needed, his calm demeanor a steadying presence in the room. But as the meeting wound down, the atmosphere shifted. The elders exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Elder Hawthorne cleared his throat. There is one more issue we need to address, he said, his gaze settling on Noah. It concerns you, Alpha. Noah arched an eyebrow, leaning back slightly in his chair. Go on. Hawthorne hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. It has come to our attention that you may be considering a mate. The room fell silent, the weight of his statement hanging in the air. Noah's expression didn't change, but a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. He hadn't spoken openly about his feelings for Sage. Only to Joan, but he knew her and he knew she wouldn't tell the elders. She felt they were douchebags sometimes. Nor would she tell anyone else. Noah trusted her with his life. And yet here it was, laid bare before the council. I wasn't aware this was a matter for council discussion, Noah said evenly, his voice calm but firm. Ordinarily it wouldn't be, Hawthorne replied. But the circumstances are unique. Noah's gaze sharpened. What circumstances? Elder Miriam leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The girl in question, Sage. She's not of a strong bloodline. Her parents were not high-ranking members of the pack, and she has no family ties to bolster her position. Some believe that this could weaken the alpha line. Noah's jaw tightened, the calm facade cracking just slightly. And who exactly is some? The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but no one answered. It was clear they weren't going to reveal their source. But Noah could feel the truth simmering beneath the surface. Someone had brought this to their attention. Someone with their own agenda. Do you have any idea who might have told you this? Noah asked, his tone sharp. Elder Hawthorne shook his head. The information was brought to us anonymously, but the motives behind it could be varied. You know as well as we do that your choice of mate carries weight, not just for you, but for all of us. Noah leaned forward, his gaze steely. My choice of mate is exactly that, my choice. And it will be based on more than bloodlines or politics. It will be based on what's best for the pack, and for me. The room grew tense, the silence stretching thin. Finally, Elder Miriam spoke, her voice softer this time. No one doubts your judgment, Alpha. But you must understand, there are those in the pack who see tradition as a cornerstone of our strength. And tradition dictates that the Alpha's mate should be someone of equal standing. Noah's eyes narrowed. Sage is stronger than most wolves I know. She's proven that time and time again. Her worth isn't measured by her bloodline. And anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. The elders shifted uncomfortably, but none of them argued. Noah's authority as Alpha was absolute, and challenging him directly was not something they were willing to do. But the tension in the room was undeniable. As the meeting concluded, Noah lingered behind, his thoughts churning. Someone in the pack had gone out of their way to bring this to the elders' attention. And while the identity of the informant remained a mystery, one thing was clear. They weren't done causing trouble. I don't care who you are, Noah thought, his jaw clenched. If you think you can manipulate me or undermine Sage, you're in for a rude awakening. But as he left the chamber and stepped into the cool evening air, another thought crept in unbidden. What if the elders were right? What if his feelings for Sage, as strong as they were, led to complications he couldn't foresee? His wolf growled softly, a low, comforting sound. She's your mate. You know it. They'll see it too eventually. Noah exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. His wolf was right. Fate had a way of silencing doubts, and when the time came, no one would question his choice. Let them whisper, he muttered to himself. In the end, they will see what I see. Sage was strong-willed and a great person. All those years of being alone she trained, increases her combat skills, and became an excellent trainer herself. But she fell in love with Ben, and that made her lose her self-worth. Nao strangely has always noticed Sage, but due to responsibilities and him training to be stronger, faster and better to be able to lead didn't allow him make a move. So he was already in love with her even before his wolf cried out to him, saying she was his mate. Fate truly has lots of tricks up its sleeves. But as he walked away from the pack house, the shadow of the anonymous informant loomed large in his mind. Whoever they were, they had made their move, and no one knew it was only a matter of time before they will do something. Chapter 7. There's something about the river. The way it flows, endlessly moving forward. It reminds me that life keeps going, even when you feel stuck. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it takes you somewhere unexpected. The sun hung low in the sky, its golden light shimmering across the surface of the river. The soft rustle of leaves and the gentle babble of water were the only sounds, a symphony of nature that always seemed to calm me. This spot had become my refuge, a place where I could think without the weight of the pack pressing down on me. I wasn't expecting anyone to be there that evening, so when I spotted a figure sitting by the water's edge, I hesitated, unsure whether to stay or turn back. It didn't take long to recognize him. Even from a distance, Noah's presence was unmistakable. He sat on a large rock, his elbows resting on his knees, staring out at the river with a faraway look in his eyes. The golden light of the setting sun framed him, making him look almost otherworldly. For a moment, I just stood there, watching him. He looked different, quieter somehow. Less like the Alpha everyone saw and more like just Noah. Before I could think better of it, I stepped forward, my boots crunching softly against the dirt. His head turned slightly at the sound, and when his eyes met mine, a small, almost shy smile tugged at his lips. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, stopping a few steps away. He gestured to the space beside him. "Come sit. The river's better when you share it." I hesitated, my heart doing a little flip at his invitation. But then I walked over and lowered myself onto the rock beside him. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, listening to the water and the wind, letting the quiet stretch between us. And for once, the silence wasn't uncomfortable. Finally, I broke it. "You come here often?" I asked, my voice soft. He nodded, his gaze still fixed on the water. "Used to. Haven't had much time lately. Too many responsibilities, too many fires to put out. Sometimes literally." I laughed softly, the sound surprising even me. I know the feeling. The world doesn't stop, does it? He turned to look at me, his expression thoughtful. No, it doesn't. But it helps coming here. Makes everything feel smaller. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. This place had the same effect on me. It made the weight of my past, the ache in my heart, feel a little less crushing. I understood what he meant and I added, "It's the only place I feel like I can breathe," I admitted. When everything feels like it's too much, this is where I come to remind myself that I'm still here. That I'm still me. He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. Noah had always seemed to carry the weight of the pack so effortlessly. But sitting here with him, I realized how heavy that weight must really be. "You're stronger than you think," he said suddenly, his voice firm. "You've been through so much, and yet you're still standing. You're still fighting. That says a lot about who you are, Sage." I looked away, my throat tightening. "I don't feel strong most of the time." "That's the thing about strength," he said. "You don't have to feel it for it to be there. Sometimes, it's just in the fact that you keep going, even when it's hard." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and for the first time in a long time I felt seen. Truly seen. Without thinking, I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. Instead, he shifted slightly, making it easier for me to settle against him. His warmth seeped into me, steady and comforting, and for a moment, I let myself forget about everything else. We sat like that, watching the river, the quiet wrapping around us like a cocoon. My wolf stirred inside me, her presence calm but alert, as if she, too, recognized the significance of this moment. I turned my head slightly, and our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, something raw and unguarded, that made me loose my breathe. Slowly, almost hesitantly, we began to lean toward each other, the space between us shrinking. And then, well, isn't this cozy? The voice shattered the moment like glass, and I jerked back, my heart pounding. Noah sighed, his expression caught somewhere between amusement and exasperation. Joan stood a few feet away, a sly grin on her face and her arms crossed. "Should I come back later? Or should I just start planning the wedding now?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "Joan." "What?" "Don't blame me for having perfect timing," she said, winking. "You two look like you were about to reenact some cheesy romance novel scene." I was half expecting rose petals to fall from the sky. Noah shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "What do you want, Joan?" "Nothing," she said, still grinning. "Just making sure you're not slacking off, Alpha." I couldn't help but laugh, despite my embarrassment. Joan had a way of diffusing tension that was both infuriating and endearing. "All right, you've had your fun," Noah said, standing and offering me a hand. "Let's head back before she starts writing poetry about us." I took his hand, the warmth of his touch lingering even after I let go. As we walked back toward the pack house, I couldn't stop the smile that crept onto my face. Maybe the river had taken me somewhere unexpected after all. Chapter 8. The past has a way of clawing its way back, no matter how far you think you've run from it. And when it collides with the present, it can leave everything in ruins. The pack house courtyard was alive with its usual buzz of activity. Wolves milled about, some sparring, others chatting in small groups, their laughter carrying on the breeze. I stood near the edge, leaning against a wooden post, watching the scene unfold with a distant sort of detachment. Ever since Joan's interruption at the river, my thoughts had been a jumbled mess of confusion and longing, emotions I wasn't ready to confront. That's when I saw him. Ben emerged from the training grounds, his dark hair damp with sweat and his shirt clinging to his frame. He looked the same as he always had, handsome, confident, with that familiar smirk that used to make my heart skip a beat. But today that smirk was gone. His eyes found mine almost instantly, and the weight of his gaze pinned me in place. He was heading straight for me. I straightened, my wolf stirring uneasily. Not now, I thought, dread curling in my stomach. Whatever he wanted, it couldn't be good. But Ben didn't stop in front of me. He brushed past, his shoulders tense, and kept walking, right toward Noah. Noah was standing near the center of the courtyard, talking with a group of betas about patrol rotations. He looked every bit the alpha. Calm, commanding, and completely in control. But when Ben approached, the tension in the air shifted. "We need to talk," Ben said, his voice low but sharp. Noah dismissed the betas with a nod, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face his brother. "What's this about?" "You know damn well what it's about," Ben snapped, his voice rising. "Don't play dumb with me." By now, the courtyard had gone quiet. Conversations halted as wolves turned to watch the brewing confrontation. I felt my chest tighten, the uneasy hum of my wolf growing louder. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to end well. "If you have something to say, Ben, say it," Noah said, his tone even but laced with warning. Ben stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "How long has this been going on?" Noah frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ben's eyes flicked to me, then back to Noah. "You and Sage. Don't act like I don't see it. The way you look at her, the way you're always around her. You're my brother, Noah. How could you do this to me?" The accusation hit like a thunderclap, and I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The wolves around us exchanged murmurs, their curiosity evident. Noah's expression darkened, and for a moment, I thought he might lose the calm composure he always carried. "Ben," Noah said slowly, his voice dangerously low. "You need to stop." "Stop what?" "Calling you out." Ben laughed bitterly, but there was no humor in it. "You've been circling her ever since I left." The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Ben's face twisted with anger, and he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "She was mine. That was it. The breaking point. Enough!" I shouted, pushing myself away from the post and stepping between them. My voice cut through the tension like a blade, and both men turned to look at me. My hands were trembling, but I didn't care. I'd had enough. "You don't get to do this," I said, glaring at Ben. "You don't get to walk away and then act like you still have some claim over me. You made your choice. You left." Ben's eyes widened, the anger in them flickering into something else. Regret, maybe. But I wasn't done. "And for the record," I continued, my voice rising, "I've moved on. Whatever you think is happening between me and Noah, it isn't. There's nothing going on." The words tumbled out before I could stop them, and the moment they did, I knew I'd made a mistake. I didn't have to look at Noah to know how much they hurt him. I could feel it, like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't take them back. Ben's expression shifted, his anger softening into something almost hopeful. He opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. "But that doesn't mean anything for you and me either," I said, my voice firm. "We're done, Ben. Whatever we had, it's over. You need to accept that and move on." His face fell, the hope extinguished as quickly as it had appeared. For a moment, he just stood there, his shoulders slumping as the weight of my words sank in. Then he turned and walked away, his steps heavy and slow. The courtyard was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I turned to look at Noah, my chest tightening at the expression on his face. He was watching me, his eyes dark and unreadable, but there was no mistaking the hurt beneath them. "Noah, I started," but he shook his head. "It's fine," he said, his voice quiet. "You don't owe me an explanation." Before I could say anything else, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in the middle of the courtyard, feeling more alone than I had in weeks. Why does it always end like this? I whispered to myself, the sound of my own voice lost in the murmurs of the pack as they slowly went back to their routines. That night, as I sat by the fire in my room, the events of the day replayed in my mind. Ben's accusations, Noah's quiet pain, the words I'd thrown out without thinking. My wolf stirred restlessly, her unease mirroring my own. "You pushed him away," she said, her voice a soft growl in the back of my mind. "Why?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the lingering scars Ben had left behind. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something I wasn't ready to face. But as the fire crackled and the night stretched on, one thought refused to leave me. I couldn't keep running from the people who cared about me. And if I wasn't careful, I might lose them both for good. "I have to figure this out," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Before it's too late." Chapter 9. Jealousy is a silent predator. It waits, coiled and patient, striking when you least expect it. And sometimes, it hides in the people closest to you. The moon hung low in the sky, its silvery light casting long shadows over the pack house. While most of the pack rested, one figure prowled the dark corridors with a single-minded focus. Lyra, the daughter of a respected elder and a member of one of the pack's oldest and most prestigious bloodlines, moved with the grace of someone born into privilege. Her thoughts churned as she made her way to her quarters, her perfectly poised exterior masking the tempest within. She couldn't understand it. How someone like Sage, with no family, no legacy, and no claim to anything, had managed to gain Noah's attention. Lyra had worked tirelessly to uphold her family's reputation, training relentlessly, mastering every skill expected of a future alpha's mate. And yet, it was Sage who had captured his gaze. She slammed the door to her room, the sound echoing in the silence. Her wolf growled low in her chest, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "It should have been me," she muttered under her breath, pacing the length of her room. "It was always supposed to be me." Lyra had known Noah for years. She had stood beside him in countless battles, had shared moments of triumph and loss with him. She had always believed that when the time came, he would choose her. She had the bloodline, the strength, the respect of the pack elders. She was everything a mate to the alpha should be. But Sage was a nobody, a girl whose parents had died in obscurity, who had no family to vouch for her, no legacy to stand on. She had been nothing more than a broken shell after Ben left her, hiding away while the rest of the pack carried on. What could Noah possibly see in her? One day Lyra had waited until the elders were alone, then approached them under the guise of concern for the pack. "I don't mean to overstep," she had said, her tone sweet but laced with feigned worry. "But I think you should know that Alpha Noah has been spending a lot of time with Sage. I'm sure his intentions are pure, but well, you know how these things look." The elders had taken the bait, their disapproval of Sage already simmering beneath the surface. Lyra had left the chamber that day with a small, satisfied smile, confident that she had planted the seeds of doubt. But it wasn't enough. As Lyra sat at her desk, her fingers drumming against the polished wood, she knew she needed to take things further. The elders hadn't done enough to deter Noah, and Sage remained a thorn in her side. If anything, the confrontation between Noah and Ben had only made her more determined to act. She pulled out a piece of parchment and began writing, her pen moving with swift precision. It was a message to a contact outside the pack, someone who could help her execute her plan without raising suspicion. "Sage doesn't belong here," she whispered to herself as she wrote. "She's a distraction, a weakness, and weaknesses have no place in the Alpha's world." Her wolf stirred, its presence sharp and calculating. It didn't object to her plan, in fact, it seemed to relish the idea. Together, they would ensure that Sage was removed from the picture permanently. Lyra paused, her pen hovering over the parchment. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. What if she was wrong? What if Noah's bond with Sage was genuine, fated? But she pushed the thought aside. Fated or not, it didn't matter. She deserved to be the Alpha's mate. She had earned it. The next day, Lyra walked through the pack house with her usual air of confidence, her polished facade firmly in place. No one would suspect her of anything. She was too well-liked, too respected. But beneath the surface, her mind was already calculating her next move. She caught sight of Sage in the courtyard, speaking with Joan and a group of young wolves. There was a lightness in Sage's demeanor that hadn't been there before, a spark of confidence that made Lyra's stomach twist. It only solidified her resolve. As she turned away, her thoughts darkened. Let them think she's stronger. Let them believe she belongs. By the time I'm finished, she'll be nothing more than a memory. That night, as the pack slept, Lyra sat by the window in her room, watching the moonlight spill over the forest. The parchment she had written earlier was folded neatly in her lap, ready to be delivered. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Sage wouldn't be a part of it. The Alpha needs a mate worthy of his title, and I'll make sure he gets one. Chapter 10. Conflict doesn't come all at once. It creeps in little by little, like cracks in a foundation. And if you don't catch it in time, it can bring everything down. The first sign of trouble came just before dawn. A patrol of scouts, returning from the northern border, burst into the pack house with grim faces and hurried steps. Their clothes were torn, their skin streaked with dirt and blood. Noah met them in the courtyard, his expression sharpening into something cold and deadly the moment he saw them. What happened? He asked, his voice steady despite the urgency in his eyes. One of the scouts, a wiry young wolf named Micah, stepped forward, his hands trembling. Rogues, he said, his voice hoarse. They ambushed us near the river bend. We managed to fight them off, but they're growing bolder. They're testing our defenses. Noah's jaw tightened, his wolf stirring with a low, simmering growl. How many? 5, Micah replied. But they weren't scattered like before. They moved together like a unit. It was organized. That word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Organized. The rogues weren't just a nuisance anymore. They were becoming a threat. Noah dismissed the scouts, sending them to the healers to tend to their wounds. But as they walked away, he remained in the courtyard, his fists clenched at his sides. The pack was strong, but a coordinated attack from the rogues could put them all at risk. We need to prepare, his wolf said, its voice steady but urgent. This isn't going to stop. Noah nodded to himself, already forming a plan. The news of the rogue attack spread quickly through the pack, and by midday, the training grounds were full. Wolves of all ranks gathered, their usual chatter replaced by a sense of grim determination. Joan stood at the front, barking instructions as the younger wolves practiced their forms. I watched from the sidelines, my arms crossed. Part of me wanted to jump in, to let my wolf stretch and feel the rush of battle again. But I held back, unsure of where I fit into all of this. Joan caught sight of me and waved me over. Come on, Sage, she called. Don't just stand there. Let's see what you've got. I hesitated, but the expectant looks from the younger wolves left me with little choice. Stepping onto the field, I squared my shoulders, ignoring the flutter of nerves in my stomach. Joan paired me with a younger wolf named Lila, a scrappy girl with bright eyes and quick reflexes. The first few rounds were easy enough, basic moves, nothing I couldn't handle. But as Joan ramped up the difficulty, I found myself falling into a rhythm. My wolf surged forward, guiding my movements with precision and power. Every dodge, every strike felt sharper, more deliberate. By the time Joan called for a break, Lila was panting and grinning, her eyes shining with respect. You're really good, she said, her voice full of admiration. I smiled, a small but genuine thing. Thanks. You're not bad yourself. The other wolves began to gather around, their curiosity piqued. Joan clapped me on the back, her grin wide. Told you she's a natural. The praise warmed me, but it also made me uneasy. As much as I appreciated the recognition, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. That someone was Lyra. From her vantage point near the edge of the training grounds, she watched the scene unfold, her expression unreadable. Every laugh, every cheer for Sage sent a fresh wave of resentment surging through her. They're fools, she muttered to herself. All of them. Just because she's good at a few sparring matches doesn't mean she's worthy of him. Her wolf stirred restlessly, mirroring her frustration. She's gaining their favor. If this continues, they'll accept her. Even the elders might change their minds. Lyra's hands curled into fists, her nails biting into her palms. She couldn't let that happen. Not after everything she'd done, everything she'd worked for. No, she thought, her eyes narrowing. She's still a nobody, and I'll make sure she stays that way. Meanwhile, Noah was in the council chamber, strategizing with his betas. A map of the territory lay spread across the table, marked with red X's where rogue sightings had been reported. They're focusing on the northern and western borders, one of the betas said, pointing to the map, probably trying to cut off our supply routes. Noah nodded, his gaze sweeping over the map. We'll double patrols in those areas. Joan, I want you to lead the northern team. Make sure they're ready for anything. Joan nodded, her expression serious. Consider it done. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the pack was buzzing with activity. Patrols were organized, weapons were sharpened, and the air was thick with anticipation. As I walked back to my room, exhausted but satisfied with the day's progress, I caught sight of Noah standing near the edge of the courtyard. He was speaking with Joan, his expression focused but calm. For a moment I hesitated, debating whether to approach him. But before I could make up my mind, he glanced in my direction and smiled. It was a small gesture, but it sent a warmth through me that I couldn't quite explain. Maybe, I thought, I'm stronger than I give myself credit for. But as I turned and walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was far from over. Chapter 11. Sometimes, you need someone who sees the whole picture when you're too caught up in your own mess. For me, that someone was Joan. Joan had always been the glue that held things together. Whether it was during a crisis or an awkward silence at dinner, she had a way of making things work, of bringing people together. And lately, she decided that the people who needed bringing together most were Noah and me. It started with little things, subtle nudges that didn't seem obvious at first. Like when she'd make a point to leave us alone at training sessions, or when she'd invite both of us to a casual evening drink, and then conveniently disappear halfway through. It was clear what she was doing, but I didn't have the heart to call her out on it. Partly because it seemed to make her so damn happy, and partly because, deep down, I didn't hate the idea. One morning, I found Joan waiting for me outside the pack house, her arms crossed and an eager grin on her face. The sun was just starting to rise, casting golden light over the forest, and the air was crisp with the promise of a new day. "You're coming with me," she said, no preamble, no explanation. I raised an eyebrow. "Good morning to you, too. Where are we going?" "Training grounds," she replied, grabbing my arm and dragging me along. "There's a group of younger wolves who need sparring partners, and you're perfect for the job." I groaned but let her pull me along. Joan had a way of convincing you to do things before you realized you'd agreed to them. The training grounds were already buzzing with activity when we arrived. Joan directed the younger wolves with her usual no-nonsense style, shouting instructions and correcting stances. She paired me with a boy who looked barely old enough to shift, his movements clumsy but enthusiastic. "Keep your stance lower," I said, dodging one of his wild swings. "It'll give you better balance." He nodded, adjusting his position, and I couldn't help but smile. There was something satisfying about watching them improve, knowing I was helping in some small way. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Noah. He was standing at the edge of the training grounds, his arms crossed as he watched us. His presence was steady and commanding as always, but there was a softness in his gaze when it landed on me, a quiet pride that sent a warmth through my chest. Joan noticed, of course. She always noticed. "You see that," she said, nudging me with her elbow. "He's watching you like a hawk, and not just because you're good at sparring." I rolled my eyes, trying to ignore the heat rising to my cheeks. "He's just making sure the training runs smoothly." Joan snorted. "Sure he is. And I'm just here for the snacks." Later that afternoon, Joan and I sat by the river, cooling off after the training session. She stretched out on the grass, her arms behind her head, and stared up at the sky. "You know," she said after a while, "you and Noah make a good team." I glanced at her, unsure where she was going with this. "In what way?" "In every way," she said, turning to look at me. "You balance each other out. He's calm and steady, and you've got this fire in you. Together, you'd be unstoppable." I shook my head, laughing softly. "You're delusional." "Maybe," she said, grinning. "But I'm also right." As the day wore on, Joan's teasing gave way to more serious matters. The rogue shifters were becoming a constant threat, their attacks growing more coordinated and frequent. Joan had been spending more time patrolling the borders, keeping a close eye on their movements. "They're not just a nuisance anymore," she said as we walked back to the pack house. "They're planning something. I can feel it." Her tone was uncharacteristically grim, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Joan was rarely serious, but when she was, you knew to listen. "What do you think they're after?" I asked. "Territory, resources, power," she said, ticking off the possibilities on her fingers. "Maybe all three. But whatever it is, they're not stopping until they get it." The thought was a sobering one. The pack was strong, but the roads were growing bolder with every passing day. And if they managed to unite under a single leader, they could become a force to be reckoned with. That evening, Joan cornered Noah in his office. I wasn't there to hear the conversation, but I could imagine how it went. "You're working yourself to death," she probably said, crossing her arms and fixing him with one of her infamous glares. Noah would have sighed, leaning back in his chair. "The pack comes first, Joan. You know that. And who's taking care of you, huh?" she would have countered. "You can't do this alone, Noah. You need someone by your side." He wouldn't have responded to that, but knowing Joan, she wouldn't have let it go. "Sage is stronger than you think," she would have said. "She can handle this, Noah. She can handle you. You just have to let her in." By the time I saw Joan again, She was back to her usual self, cracking jokes and teasing me about my undeniable chemistry with Noah. But there was a seriousness beneath her humor, a quiet determination that reminded me of why she was so important to both of us. Joan wasn't just a friend. She was a bridge, connecting us when we couldn't quite reach each other. And as much as I resisted her meddling, part of me was grateful for it. She sees things I can't, I thought, watching her walk away with a bounce in her step. Maybe she's right. Maybe it's time to stop running. Chapter 12. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be understood. But even the strongest of us sometimes need a push to face what we're too scared to admit. The night sky stretched endlessly above the pack house, dotted with stars that seemed to flicker in time with the crackling fire in the courtyard. Noah sat on one of the wooden benches, his shoulders tense despite the calm atmosphere. He stared into the flames, the flickering light casting shadows across his face. Joan approached quietly, a mug of steaming tea in each hand. She handed one to Noah before plopping down beside him, her usual carefree energy dialed down to something softer. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," she said, taking a sip from her mug. Noah huffed a quiet laugh. "That's because I do." Yeah, alpha problems," she teased, bumping his shoulder lightly. "But this feels different. What's going on, Noah?" He didn't answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the fire. Joan waited, giving him the space to speak. She'd learned over the years that Noah didn't respond well to being pushed. Finally, he sighed. "It's just everything." Joan raised an eyebrow. "Everything is pretty vague, even for you." He smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "The pack, the rogues, the elders breathing down my neck. It feels like there's always something." "There's always something," Joan agreed. "But you've never let it get to you before. What's different now?" Noah hesitated, his jaw tightening. "It's not just the pack," he admitted quietly. Joan tilted her head, her sharp eyes narrowing as she studied him. "It's Sage, isn't it?" The way his shoulders stiffened was all the confirmation she needed. "I thought so," she said, her tone light but knowing. "You've been staring at her like she's the only person in the room. And don't think I haven't noticed how you've been hovering around the training grounds lately." Noah shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You don't miss much, do you?" "Not when it comes to you," Joan said simply. For a moment, the only sound was the crackling of the fire. Joan sipped her tea, waiting for him to continue. "It's complicated," Noah said finally, his voice low. "She's been through so much. The last thing I want is to make things harder for her." "You think caring about her would make things harder?" Joan asked, her tone gentle but probing. Noah exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. Maybe. She's still healing, Joan. I can see it in the way she carries herself. And with everything happening, the rogues, the elders, it's just not the right time." Joan set her mug down and turned to face him fully. "Noah, there's never going to be a perfect time. The world doesn't work like that. But if you keep waiting for the right moment, you might miss your chance altogether." He didn't respond, but the way his brows furrowed told her he was listening. "Look," she continued, softening her tone, "I'm not saying you need to march up to her and declare your undying love or whatever. But don't shut her out either. Trust your instincts. They've never steered you wrong before." Noah chuckled quietly. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Joan said, shrugging. "You're the one making it complicated." They sat in silence for a while, the fire slowly dying down to glowing embers. Joan leaned back, staring forward. "You know," she said after a moment, "I think she's stronger than you give her credit for. Whatever you're worried about, I think she can handle it. You just have to trust her." Noah glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You really believe that?" "I wouldn't say it if I didn't," Joan replied. "And honestly, if anyone deserves a shot at happiness, it's you. So stop overthinking and just let things happen." He didn't say anything, but the faint smile on his lips told her she'd gotten through to him, at least a little. "Thanks, Joan," he said quietly. She grinned, nudging him playfully. "What are best friends for?" As they sat there under the stars, Joan felt a flicker of hope. Noah might not be ready to admit his feelings out loud, but she could see the change in him. Slowly but surely, he was listening now and moving to making her his mate. Joan knew the complications, with Ben involved and all, but it was his mate and Ben and Sage weren't together. Maybe that was fate's hand. One step at a time, she thought, watching the embers fade into the night. They'll figure it out. They just need a little push every now and then. Chapter 13. Loyalty is the glue that holds a pack together. But when that glue starts to crack, it doesn't take much for everything to fall apart. The scent of the forest was heavy that morning, a mix of damp earth that carried a weight of unease. Noah stood on the porch of the pack house, his arms crossed as he surveyed the training grounds. The wolves were working harder than ever, preparing for the next inevitable attack from the rogues. But even with their increased vigilance, something felt off. Joan approached from the side, her usual casual swagger replaced by a more serious demeanor. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "Another report," she said, her tone clipped. Noah unfolded the note, his eyes scanning the hastily scrawled words. Rogue movements had been spotted near the southern border, an area that had always been relatively quiet. His brow furrowed. "The southern border," he said, glancing up at Joan. "They've never gone that far before." "That's what's worrying me," she replied. "It's like they know where we're weakest. Every move they've made lately has been calculated." Noah didn't respond immediately, his mind racing. The rogues weren't just growing bolder, they were growing smarter. Someone was feeding them information. Later that day, Sage found herself in the storage shed behind the pack house, organizing supplies for the upcoming patrols. The dim light and quiet gave her a sense of peace, a welcome break from the chaos outside. As she worked, she heard faint footsteps approaching. Turning, she saw a young wolf named Darren lingering near the doorway. He was barely out of his teens, with a wiry frame and a nervous energy that made him seem perpetually on edge. "Hey, Darren," Sage said, offering a small smile. "Need something?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the room before settling on her. "No, just checking in," he said quickly. They told me to see if you needed help." Sage frowned slightly. "Who told you that?" Darren shrugged, his movements stiff. "Just around." There was something playful and cheesy about him. Something that seemed he was sent to spy on her, but before she could press further, he mumbled a quick goodbye and disappeared. Her mind went to Noah. Maybe he sent the kids to come spy on her. She smiled and her heart jumped with joy. That night, Noah gathered the betas for a meeting in the council chamber. The southern border reports had only confirmed his suspicions. There was a traitor in the pack. "We have to root them out," Joan said, her voice hard. "Whoever it is, they're putting all of us at risk." Noah nodded, his expression grim. "I know, but we need to be careful. If we accuse the wrong person, it could tear the pack apart." "Do you have any suspects?" one of the betas asked. Noah hesitated. "Not yet, but I have a feeling it's someone who's desperate. Someone who feels like they don't have a place here." Joan frowned. Desperation can make people do stupid things. But what's their angle? What are they getting out of this? That was the question that gnawed at Noah. The rogues didn't have much to offer. No structure, no stability. So why would someone risk everything to help them? The answer came 2 days later, when another attack hit the northern patrols. This time, the rogues had ambushed the group with alarming precision, targeting their leader and scattering the rest. The wounded wolves who made it back to the pack house described the rogues as being one step ahead at every turn. It was Joan who found the first clue. She was combing through the aftermath of the attack when she discovered a torn scrap of fabric caught on a branch. It matched the uniform of the pack scouts, but it wasn't from anyone who'd been on the patrol. She brought it straight to Noah, her expression grim. "Whoever's feeding the rogues information is close, Noah," she said, dropping the scrap of fabric onto his desk. "Close enough to have access to our patrol schedules." Noah picked up the fabric, his wolf growling low in his chest. The scent was faint but familiar. Joan leaned back, crossing her arms. "What do you want to do?" Noah exhaled sharply. "We'll watch. If there's the traitor close, we need proof before we act." Chapter 14. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't the ones we fight with others. They're the ones we fight with ourselves, against the walls we've built, the fears we've nurtured, and the hope we're too scared to believe in. The training grounds were quieter today, a stark contrast to the usual flurry of activity. Most of the wolves were out on patrol or assisting with the pack's preparations against the rogues. I stood near the edge of the field, absently stretching, trying to work out the tension in my shoulders. My thoughts were heavy, tangled in the web of everything that had happened recently, the rogues and Noah. He'd been everywhere lately. Not in an overbearing way, but always in the background, watching, supporting, ensuring I was okay without ever outright saying it. It was in the way he stayed a little longer at the training grounds when I was sparring, or how his eyes would flick to me during meetings, as if checking to make sure I was holding up. It was in the quiet moments, when he didn't say anything but was just there. I didn't know how to feel about it. Part of me wanted to lean into it, to let myself feel whatever this was that was growing between us. But the other part, the louder, more guarded part, wanted to push him away, because letting him in meant opening myself up to the possibility of being hurt again. And I wasn't sure I could survive that. Later that afternoon, I found myself walking through the forest, drawn to the familiar comfort of the river. The sound of rushing water always had a way of calming me, of quieting the noise in my head. As I approached the clearing, I stopped short. Noah was there, sitting on a fallen log near the edge of the water. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving. But he looked up before I could, his gaze meeting mine. He smiled, a small, genuine smile that made something in my chest tighten. "You can come closer," he said, his voice warm. "I don't bite. Not without good reason, anyway." I huffed a quiet laugh, stepping into the clearing. "You're here a lot lately," I said, sitting on a rock a few feet away. "It's a good spot," he replied, leaning back on his hands. "Quiet. Peaceful. Helps me think." "What are you thinking about?" I asked before I could stop myself. He hesitated, his gaze drifting back to the water. "The pack. The rogues. How to keep everyone safe." He paused, then added quietly, "You?" My breath caught, and I turned my head to look at him. His expression was calm, but there was something deeper in his eyes, something that made it hard to look away. "Me?" I asked, my voice softer now. He nodded. "You've been through so much, Sage. And yet you're still here. Still fighting. I want to make sure you're okay." His words shouldn't have surprised me, but they did. And they hit harder than I expected. Because no one had ever looked at me like that before, with concern, yes, but also with something deeper. Something that felt like care. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "You don't have to worry about me." He tilted his head, his gaze unwavering. "Maybe not. But I do anyway." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that neither of us seemed ready to address. I wanted to say something, to thank him or brush it off, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I looked away, staring at the water as my thoughts churned. That evening, as I sat in my room, replaying the conversation in my mind, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I was drawn to him. Not just because of his strength or his leadership, but because of the way he saw me. The way he looked at me like I wasn't just another wolf in the pack, but someone who mattered. Someone worth protecting. And that terrified me. Because if I let myself feel this, if I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be my mate, it meant opening myself up to the possibility of losing him. It meant trusting someone again after everything that had happened with Ben. My wolf stirred, her presence calm but insistent. "He's different," she said, her voice a quiet murmur in the back of my mind. "You know he is." I shook my head. "It's not that simple." "You're making it complicated," she replied. "You're scared. And I get it. But you can't keep running forever." I sighed, leaning back against the wall. My wolf was right, of course. She always was. But knowing that didn't make it any easier. The next day, I found myself sparring with Joan in the training grounds. She was relentless, as always, pushing me to my limits with every move. But even as we fought, my mind kept drifting back to Noah, his words, his gaze, the way he made me feel seen. "You're distracted," Joan said, ducking under my swing and tapping me lightly on the side with her elbow. "I'm fine," I muttered, stepping back to reset my stance. She raised an eyebrow, her grin sharp. "Sure you are. Let me guess, Noah." I glared at her, but she just laughed. "You're so obvious, Sage. It's almost painful to watch." "It's not like that," I said, though the words felt hollow even to me. "Right," Joan said, rolling her eyes. "Keep telling yourself that." As the day wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Joan was right. Maybe I was making things more complicated than they needed to be. Maybe it was time to stop running. But even as the thought crossed my mind, the walls I'd built around my heart held firm. Because letting them down meant taking a risk. a risk I wasn't sure I was ready to take. Maybe someday, I thought, watching Noah from across the training grounds. But not today. Chapter 15. Sometimes, it takes chaos to show the world what you're really made of. And sometimes, that chaos burns away more than just your fear. The alarm went up just before dusk. A low, mournful howl echoed through the packlands, cutting through the stillness like a blade. I was in the courtyard when I heard it, sparring with a younger wolf. My body froze for a fraction of a second before instinct took over. My wolf stirred, sharp and alert, her energy rippling through me like an electric current. Noah's voice rang out from the pack house steps, calm but commanding. They're at the eastern border. Patrol teams regroup. Joan, take your squad north as backup. Sage, he turned to me, his eyes meeting mine. You're with me? I nodded without hesitation. The fear that had once gripped me in moments like these was gone, replaced by a steady determination. The pack was my family now, and I would fight for it with everything I had. The eastern border was chaos when we arrived. Wolves clashed in a blur of fur and fangs, snarls and growls filling the air. The rogues were vicious, their movements sharp and coordinated, but our wolves held their ground. Noah shifted immediately, his massive black wolf barreling into the fray with a ferocity that sent two rogues scattering. Joan's squad arrived seconds later, reinforcing the line and driving the rogues back toward the treeline. I stayed close to Noah, my wolf poised and ready. A rogue lunged at us, his eyes wild and his teeth bared, but I met him head-on. My wolf surged forward, her claws raking across his side as we collided. He yelped in pain, stumbling back, and I pressed the advantage, pinning him to the ground. Leave, I growled, my voice a low snarl. This is our land. The rogue hesitated, his eyes darting to the retreating pack members. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, disappearing into the shadows. Another rogue came at me from the side, but I was ready. I ducked under his swipe, my wolf twisting with a fluidity that surprised even me. With a sharp strike, I knocked him off balance, sending him tumbling to the ground. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of our younger wolves struggling against a much larger rogue. Without thinking, I charged, ramming into the rogue with enough force to send him sprawling. The younger wolf scrambled to safety, and I stood between them, baring my teeth. The rogue snarled but didn't attack again. Instead, he backed away, his eyes narrowing as if memorizing my face before disappearing into the trees. By the time the battle was over, the rogues had retreated, leaving the eastern border littered with signs of the fight. Tufts of fur, claw marks, and the scent of blood hanging heavy in the air. Noah shifted back, his chest heaving as he surveyed the area. His gaze found mine, and for a moment he just stared, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, a small but unmistakable gesture of approval. Good work, Sage, he said, his voice low but steady. Joan appeared beside him, grinning despite the gash on her arm. Good work? She was incredible. Did you see her out there? She's a force of nature. I felt heat rise to my cheeks at their praise but managed a small smile. I just did what needed to be done. You did more than that, Joan said, clapping me on the shoulder. The pack's lucky to have you. The other wolves murmured their agreement, their gazes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Respect. It was a strange feeling, being seen like this, not as the broken girl who had been left behind, but as someone strong, someone capable. From the shadows near the treeline, Lyra watched the scene unfold, her nails digging into the bark of a nearby tree. Her wolf paced restlessly in her mind, mirroring her growing frustration. They're praising her, Lyra muttered, her voice a low hiss. Like she's one of them. Like she belongs. Her wolf growled softly. She's gaining their favor. If this keeps up, even the elders will change their minds. Lyra's jaw tightened, her mind racing. She had spent years building her reputation, ensuring that she was seen as the perfect choice for the alpha's mate. And yet here was Sage, a wolf with no legacy, no family, stepping into the role Lyra had always believed was hers. This isn't over, Lyra whispered, her voice trembling with anger. I won't let her take what's mine. She turned and disappeared into the forest, her thoughts dark and her resolve hardening. That evening, the pack gathered around the fire pit in the courtyard, their spirits high despite the day's events. The battle had been won, and the sense of unity was palpable. I sat on the edge of the circle, listening as the younger wolves recounted their experiences, their voices filled with awe and excitement. Every now and then, one of them would glance at me, their expressions warm with gratitude. Noah sat across from me, his gaze steady as he watched the pack. When our eyes met, he smiled, a small, private thing that sent a flutter through my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. But belonging comes with a price. Chapter 16. Even when you think you've moved on, the ghosts of the past have a way of lingering. And sometimes, those ghosts take the shape of the people closest to you. Noah found Ben near the edge of the forest, sitting on a fallen log with a bottle of whiskey in his hand. The evening was quiet, the air cool and heavy with the scent of pine. Ben's posture was slouched, his head tilted back as he stared at the darkening sky. He didn't look up when Noah approached, but he spoke, his voice rough. "If you're here to lecture me, don't bother." Noah stopped a few feet away, crossing his arms over his chest. "I'm not here to lecture you, Ben. I'm here to talk." Ben huffed a laugh, shaking his head. "Talk? Since when do we talk about anything that matters?" Noah frowned but didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he stepped closer and lowered himself onto the log beside his brother. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional distant howl of a wolf on patrol. Finally, Noah broke the silence. "It's about Sage." Ben's grip on the bottle tightened, his knuckles widening. "Figured as much," he muttered. "Go on then. Say what you came to say." Noah leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "You know how I feel about her, Ben. You've known for a while." Ben let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, I've noticed. Hard not to. The way you look at her." He took a swig from the bottle, the alcohol burning down his throat. "So what, Noah? You want my blessing? My permission? Because I'm not sure I can give you that." "I'm not asking for your permission," Noah said calmly, though his wolf bristled beneath the surface. "I'm asking for your understanding. You left her, Ben. You made that choice. And he paused, struggling to find the right words. "I care about her. I've cared about her for a long time." Ben turned to look at him then, his eyes dark and filled with a storm of emotions, anger, guilt, regret. "I didn't leave her because I didn't care about her," he said quietly. "I left because I wasn't what she needed, and I thought maybe someone else could give her what I couldn't." Noah nodded slowly, his expression softening. "Maybe that someone else is me." Ben's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Noah thought he might lash out. But then his shoulders slumped, and he exhaled heavily. "She deserves to be happy," Ben said, his voice low. "If you can give her that, then fine. I'll step aside." The tension in Noah's chest eased slightly, but he knew this wasn't over. The words had been said, but the emotions behind them, Ben's lingering jealousy, his unresolved feelings, still hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The next day, the tension between the brothers was palpable. Though Ben had agreed to step aside, his behavior told a different story. He avoided Noah during meetings, his responses clipped and his tone sharp. During training sessions, he pushed himself harder than usual, his frustration bleeding into every movement. Sage noticed, of course. She always did. One afternoon, as she was leaving the training grounds, she caught sight of Ben sparring with one of the younger wolves. His strikes were aggressive, his movements almost reckless. It wasn't like him. She hesitated, debating whether to approach him. But before she could decide, Ben's sparring partner called a break, leaving him alone near the edge of the field. Sage took a deep breath and walked over. "Ben," she said, her voice tentative. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face before it was replaced by something more guarded. "Sage." She crossed her arms, studying him. "What's going on with you? You've been off lately." He let out a bitter laugh, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Off? That's one way to put it." "Talk to me," she said, her tone softer now. "This isn't like you." Ben shook his head, his gaze dropping to the ground. "It's nothing, Sage. Just trying to figure some things out." She frowned, stepping closer. "Does this have anything to do with Noah?" His head snapped up, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Why would you think that?" Sage hesitated, the weight of his gaze pressing down on her. "Because he's been different lately, too. And I know you two have history. Complicated history." Ben exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, you could say that." He paused, then added quietly, "Look, Sage, I want you to be happy. I mean that. But seeing you with him, it's harder than I thought it'd be." Her chest tightened, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. "Ben." He held up a hand, cutting her off. "You don't have to say anything. I need time. That's all." She nodded slowly, her heart aching for reasons she couldn't quite explain. "Take all the time you need." As she walked away, she couldn't help but glance back, her thoughts a tangled mess. Ben had stepped aside, but the tension between him and Noah was far from resolved. And deep down, she knew it wouldn't be. Not until all three of them faced the truth head-on. Later that evening, Noah found Ben in the war room, poring over maps of the Pack's territory. He hesitated in the doorway, watching his brother for a moment before stepping inside. "Ben," he said quietly. Ben didn't look up. "What do you want, Noah?" Noah crossed the room, his footsteps measured. "I just wanted to check on you." Ben snorted. "You don't have to. I'm fine." Noah frowned but didn't press. Instead, he placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. "I meant what I said. I care about you, Ben. And I'll always have your back." Ben finally looked up, his expression softening just slightly. "Yeah, I know." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. For now it was enough. "We're not there yet," Noah thought as he left the room. "But we'll get there. Eventually." Chapter 17. Some wounds run deeper than others. And when the people who share your blood are the ones causing the pain, it feels like there's no way to heal. The evening air was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and made it hard to breathe. The Pack house was unusually quiet, the wolves scattered across the territory on various assignments. Inside the war room, Noah stood over the large oak table, his hands pressed firmly against its surface as he studied the map spread out before him. His wolf stirred uneasily, sensing the tension that had been simmering all day. The door creaked open, and Noah didn't need to turn to know it was Ben. His brother's scent, familiar yet sharp with agitation, filled the room. Noah sighed but didn't look up. "What is it, Ben?" he asked, his voice calm but clipped. "We need to talk," Ben said, his tone tense. Noah straightened, finally meeting Ben's gaze. His brother stood rigid in the doorway, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The storm brewing in his eyes was impossible to ignore. "About what?" Noah asked, though he already knew the answer. "About you. About Sage. About this whole mess you've dragged us into," Ben snapped, stepping further into the room. Noah's jaw tightened, his wolf growling softly in the back of his mind. "I haven't dragged anyone into anything, Ben. If this is about Sage—" "Of course it's about Sage," Ben interrupted, his voice rising. "You say you care about me, that you've got my back, but then you go and what? Try to take her from me." Noah's eyes narrowed, his own anger bubbling to the surface. "Take her from you? You left her, Ben. You made your choice. Don't put that on me. You think this is that simple," Ben said, his voice dripping with bitterness. "You don't understand what it was like, what I felt, what I still feel." "Then tell me," Noah said, stepping around the table to face his brother directly. "Tell me why you walked away if you still care about her so much." Ben's jaw worked as he struggled to find the words. "Because I wasn't enough for her," he said finally, his voice cracking. "I saw it in her eyes, Noah. Every time I looked at her, I could see that she needed more than I could give. So I left. I thought I was doing the right thing." Noah's expression softened for a moment, the weight of Ben's words settling over him. But the anger wasn't gone, not completely. "And now what?" Noah asked. "You regret it, so you're lashing out at me? You think you can undo what's already done?" Ben stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "What I think is that you didn't even wait, Noah. The moment I was out of the picture, you were right there. Like a vulture, circling." Noah's wolf surged forward, his growl deep and guttural. "Watch your words, Ben. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Ben spat. "I've seen the way you look at her. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? Waiting for me to screw up so you could swoop in and play the hero." The accusation hit harder than Noah expected, but he didn't back down. "You don't get to put this on me," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You made your choice. You left her, and you left the Pack. I'm just trying to pick up the pieces you broke." The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. Ben's face twisted with anger, and for a moment, Noah thought he might swing at him. But instead, Ben turned away, pacing the length of the room like a caged animal. "You don't get it," Ben muttered, more to himself than to Noah. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? The alpha who can do no wrong. But you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. To always be second best." Noah's fists clenched at his sides, his wolf growling louder. "This isn't about being second best, Ben. This is about you not being able to face the consequences of your own choices." Ben whirled on him, his eyes blazing. "And you think you're any better? You think Sage deserves someone like you? You're so caught up in being the alpha, in trying to fix everyone else's problems, that you don't even see your own." The words hit their mark, but Noah refused to show it. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice cold. "Believe what you want, Ben. But I won't apologize for caring about her. And I won't let your jealousy ruin this pack." Ben's shoulders tensed, his breathing heavy. For a moment, it looked like he might say something else, something final. But then he shook his head, his expression hardening. "Do what you want, Noah," he said, his voice quiet but sharp. "But don't expect me to stand by and watch." With that, he turned and stormed out of the room, leaving Noah alone in the heavy silence. The door slammed shut behind him, the sound echoing through the pack house. Noah stood there for a long time, his mind racing. His wolf was restless, pacing in his mind, its growls a low hum in the background. "He's hurting," his wolf said after a while. Noah exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I know." But knowing didn't make it easier. The bond between him and Ben felt like it was fraying, unraveling thread by thread. And as much as he wanted to fix it, he didn't know how. "He's your brother," his wolf said, its voice softer now. "He'll come around, but not until he faces his own demons." Noah nodded, though the words did little to ease the ache in his chest. For now, all he could do was focus on the pack and on Sage. That night, as Noah sat alone in his room, the weight of the confrontation settled over him like a heavy cloak. He thought of Sage, of her quiet strength and the way she had begun to rebuild herself. He thought of Ben, of the pain in his brother's eyes, and the jealousy that had poisoned their bond. "I can't fix everything," he thought, his hands tightening into fists, "but I won't let this tear us apart." Outside, the wind howled through the trees, a reminder that the battles they faced weren't just with the rogues, but with each other. Chapter 18. The forest stretched endlessly around me, its towering trees forming a canopy that dappled the ground with patches of sunlight. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, and the soft rustle of leaves underfoot was the only sound. It was the perfect place to clear my mind, or at least, that's what I told myself. I carried my journal with me, its leather cover worn and familiar beneath my fingers. Writing had become my solace in the months since Ben had left, a way to untangle the mess of emotions that swirled inside me. But today felt different, heavier, like the weight of everything was pressing down all at once. I found my usual spot near the river, a flat rock that overlooked the water. Sitting down, I opened the journal and stared at the blank page. The pen hovered over it, the words refusing to come at first. But slowly they began to spill out, messy and raw. I don't know what's happening to me. Or maybe I do, and I'm just too scared to admit it. I paused, the pen trembling slightly in my hand. My wolf stirred inside me, her presence calm but insistent. She had been quieter lately, watching, waiting. But whenever Noah was near, she came alive, her energy surging in a way that was impossible to ignore. It's him. It's always him. The way he looks at me, the way he speaks to me, the way he makes me feel like I'm more than just the broken girl I used to be. It terrifies me. The words were stark on the page, their honesty cutting deeper than I expected. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of the river fill the silence. My wolf knows. She's known for a while now. She craves him in a way I've never felt before, not even with Ben. It's deeper, stronger, like every part of me is drawn to him. And I don't know what to do with that. I set the pen down, my hands trembling. My wolf growled softly, a sound of agreement and longing. She didn't understand my hesitation, my fear. To her, the answer was simple. Noah was ours. Fate had decided, and it wasn't her nature to fight it. But I wasn't just my wolf. I was me, and the memories of what had happened with Ben were scars that hadn't fully healed. Letting myself feel this, Letting myself believe that Noah could be my mate felt like opening those wounds all over again. He's everything I've tried to avoid since Ben left. Strong, steady, someone I could actually depend on. And that scares me more than anything, because if I let myself believe in this, and it falls apart, I don't know if I'll survive it. I stared at the page, my chest tightening. The fear was like a living thing inside me, coiling around my heart and whispering doubts into my mind. But there was something else, too, something quieter but just as powerful. Hope. But then he looks at me, and for a moment I forget. I forget the fear, the doubt, the scars. I see the way he sees me, and it's like he's telling me without words that I'm enough, that I'm more than enough. My throat tightened, and I closed the journal, unable to write anymore. The weight of my own words was too much to bear. I leaned back against the rock, staring up at the sky through the gaps in the trees. My wolf stirred again, her voice a soft murmur in the back of my mind. You can't keep running. You're his. You know it. I swallowed hard, my hands clenching into fists. What if I can't handle it? I whispered aloud, the words swallowed by the forest. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. The truth was already there, buried beneath the fear and the doubt. I was falling for Noah, and no amount of denial could change that. The sound of footsteps broke through my thoughts, and I sat up, my senses sharpening. A moment later, Joan appeared, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. There you are, she said, crossing her arms. I've been looking for you. You're not sneaking off to brood, are you? I managed a small smile. Maybe a little. Joan sat down beside me, her gaze drifting to the river. You okay? I hesitated, the words caught in my throat. But Joan had a way of waiting you out, her silence as effective as any question. Finally I sighed. It's Noah, I admitted. I don't know what to do. Her eyebrows shot up, and a grin tugged at the corner of her mouth. Well, this is new. Go on, I'm listening. I shook my head, laughing softly despite myself. It's not funny. It's a little funny, she said, nudging me. Come on, Sage. Talk to me. I looked down at my hands, the vulnerability making me feel exposed. It's just complicated. He makes me feel things I didn't think I could feel again. But it's terrifying, Joan. What if I mess it up? What if it ends the way it did with Ben? Joan's expression softened, and she placed a hand on my shoulder. Listen to me, Sage. You're not the same person you were with Ben. And Noah, he's not Ben. If you feel something for him, if your wolf feels something, you owe it to yourself to at least try. Her words settled over me like a balm, soothing but not erasing the fear. I nodded slowly, the weight in my chest easing just slightly. As I walked back to the pack house that evening, my journal tucked under my arm, I couldn't stop thinking about what Joan had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop running. But even as the thought took root, the fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't quite escape. One step at a time, I thought, the sound of the river fading behind me. That's all I can do. Chapter 19. Jealousy doesn't whisper, it screams, clawing its way to the surface, demanding to be heard. And when it's ignored for too long, it burns everything in its path. The night was quiet, the kind of silence that made you uneasy if you paid attention to it for too long. The moon hung high above the forest, its silvery light casting eerie shadows across the trees. I walked through the woods, my journal tucked under my arm, drawn once again to the river. It had become my haven, the one place where the noise in my head seemed to quiet. But tonight something felt different. The forest was too still, the usual hum of nocturnal life absent. My wolf stirred uneasily, her senses heightened. I paused, glancing around, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. And then I heard it, a rustle in the underbrush, faint but deliberate. I turned toward the sound, my heart pounding. Who's there? I called, my voice steady despite the unease creeping into my chest. For a moment, there was no response. Then, a figure stepped out from the shadows, her movements deliberate and filled with a chilling confidence. Lyra. She stood there, her arms crossed, her expression calm but her eyes burning with something darker. Her presence sent a ripple of unease through me, and my wolf bristled, readying herself. Lyra, I said cautiously, what are you doing out here? She tilted her head, a small, humorless smile playing on her lips. I could ask you the same thing. Always wandering off, aren't you, Sage? Like you don't belong anywhere. The words were sharp, cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. I straightened, meeting her gaze. If you've got something to say, just say it. Her smile faded, and for a moment, the mask she wore slipped, revealing the raw anger beneath. Fine. I'll say it. You don't belong here, Sage. You never have. You're not one of us. You're a charity case, a nobody. And yet, somehow, you've managed to worm your way into places you don't deserve to be. The venom in her voice sent a chill through me, but I refused to back down. You don't get to decide who belongs and who doesn't, I said, my voice firm. The pack isn't about bloodlines or status. It's about loyalty, about strength. And I've earned my place. Lyra laughed, the sound cold and hollow. Strength, loyalty. Don't make me laugh, Sage. You're nothing more than a weak little girl pretending to be something you're not. And now you're trying to take what's mine. The accusation hit me like a blow. What are you talking about? Her eyes narrowed, her wolf shining through in the glint of her gaze. Noah, she said, her voice a low growl. You think I haven't noticed? The way he looks at you, the way he defends you, that's supposed to be me. I'm the one who's meant to stand beside him, not you. I stared at her, the realization dawning like a sudden storm. This is about him. You're doing all of this because you're jealous. Her smile returned, but it was colder this time, her wolf practically radiating malice. Jealousy? Oh, Sage, this is so much bigger than that. You don't just threaten my place with Noah. You threaten everything. The pack, the elders, the traditions. You don't belong, and I'm going to make sure everyone remembers that. Before I could respond, she reached into the satchel slung over her shoulder and pulled out a glass jar filled with some kind of liquid. My stomach dropped as the smell hit me. It was a portion of whatever, but as soon as it hit me I became weak, instantly not collapsing to the ground but unable to move easily. She pushed me to the ground. Lyra, don't, I said, my voice filled with warning. This isn't going to solve anything, I said with little strength I had. She smirked, twisting the lid off the jar. Oh, but it will. Once you're gone, everything will go back to the way it's supposed to be. Fire roared to life instantly, the flames leaping hungrily at the trees. Heat engulfed the clearing, the smoke thick and suffocating. Lyra! I tried to shout, but she was already backing away, her expression cold and detached. Goodbye, Sage, she said, her voice calm. No one's going to miss you. And then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows as the fire spread around me. Panic surged through me as the flames closed in, their heat searing my skin. My wolf howled in my mind, desperate to take control, but the smoke was thick, choking me, making it hard to think. Stay calm, I told myself, my voice a shaky whisper. You've faced worse than this, but had I? The fire was relentless, its roar deafening as it consumed everything in its path. I stumbled, coughing as the smoke filled my lungs, my vision blurring. My wolf growled, urging me to move, to fight, but my body felt heavy, sluggish. I managed to stagger toward the river, the cool scent of water cutting through the smoke. But the flames were faster, their heat pressing against my back like a living thing. As I reached the edge of the clearing, a branch snapped above me, and I barely had time to look up before it came crashing down, blocking my path. The fire surged around me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly helpless. Noah, I thought, his face flashing in my mind. Joan. Someone. Please. But the forest was empty, the silence broken only by the crackle of flames and the sound of my own labored breathing. This can't be the end, I thought, my wolf's growl fading as exhaustion took hold. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was the river, so close yet impossibly far, the flames reflecting off its surface like liquid fire. Chapter 20. In a pack, everyone has a role, a duty to fulfill. But sometimes, the bonds between individuals matter more than duty. And sometimes, those bonds are the only thing standing between life and death. Joan was restless. It wasn't unusual for her to be up late, but tonight something felt off. The air carried an unnatural stillness, and her wolf stirred uneasily, pacing in the back of her mind. She sat in the pack house's common room, sharpening her favorite blade, but her focus kept slipping. Every sound outside made her ears perk up, her instincts whispering that something was wrong. She glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, and most of the pack had turned in for the night. But Sage was still nowhere to be found. Joan frowned, her wolf growling softly. "Where is she?" she murmured to herself, standing abruptly. Sage often wandered off to clear her head, but she usually returned before it got this late. Joan grabbed her jacket and stepped out into the cool night air. The moon cast an eerie glow over the forest, and the distant sound of crickets filled the silence. She inhaled deeply, her wolf focusing on Sage's scent. It was faint but present, leading her toward the woods. She's probably at the river, Joan thought, trying to reassure herself. But as she moved deeper into the forest, her unease grew. The usual hum of nocturnal life was gone, replaced by an unsettling quiet. And then she smelled it. Smoke. Joan froze, her wolf snarling to life. The scent was faint at first, but it grew stronger as she moved towards Sage's usual spot by the river. Her heart pounded in her chest as a first flicker of orange light appeared through the trees. "No," she whispered, breaking into a sprint. When she reached the clearing, the sight that greeted her sent a wave of panic through her. Flames roared through the forest, consuming everything in their path. The heat was overwhelming, and the air was thick with smoke. Joan scanned the area frantically, her eyes stinging as she searched for any sign of Sage. "Sage!" she shouted, her voice hoarse. "Sage! Where are you?" There was no response, but she caught a glimpse of something through the haze. A figure slumped near the edge of the clearing, blocked by a fallen tree. Joan's heart clenched. "Hang on, I'm coming!" she yelled, her wolf surging forward. The flames licked at her heels as she moved closer, her jacket shielding her from the worst of the heat. She reached the tree and saw Sage lying on the ground, her face pale and her breathing shallow. "Damn it, Sage," Joan muttered, dropping to her knees. She checked her pulse, weak but steady. Relief flooded through her, but it was short-lived. The fire was closing in, and there was no way she could carry Sage out on her own. Joan's mind raced. She needed help, and she needed it fast. But most of the pack was asleep, and even if they weren't, not everyone would jump at the chance to save Sage. The divide in the pack over her presence was still too fresh, the scars of old prejudices too deep. But there was one person who wouldn't hesitate. Noah was in his office, poring over maps and reports, when Joan burst in. Her hair was singed, her clothes covered in soot, and her face streaked with ash. She didn't wait for him to speak. "It's Sage," she said, her voice urgent. "She's trapped. There's a fire at her spot by the river." Noah was already moving before she finished speaking. He grabbed his jacket and followed her out, his wolf growling with a mix of fear and fury. "What happened?" he demanded as they ran through the forest. "I don't know," Joan admitted. "But it's bad, Noah. The fire's spreading fast, and she's unconscious. I couldn't get her out on my own." The thought of Sage trapped in the flames sent a surge of adrenaline through Noah. His wolf howled in his mind, its desperation matching his own. He pushed himself harder, his feet pounding against the earth as they neared the clearing. The sight of the fire was worse than Noah had imagined. The flames illuminated the night, their roar deafening. The heat was suffocating, and the smoke stung his eyes, but none of that mattered. He saw her. Sage was still lying near the fallen tree, the fire creeping dangerously close. For a moment, time seemed to slow, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "I'm going in," he said, his voice firm. Joan grabbed his arm, her expression grim. "Be careful, Noah. The fire's unstable. One wrong move, and—" "I won't let her die," he said, cutting her off. "Not here. Not like this." Joan nodded, stepping back as Noah shifted into his wolf. His massive frame surged forward, his black fur a stark contrast to the orange glow of the flames. He moved with precision, his wolf's instincts guiding him through the chaos. When he reached Sage, he shifted back, his hands trembling as he checked her pulse again. Relief washed over him when he felt it, still weak, but still there. "Hang on, Sage," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the roar of the fire. "I've got you." Chapter 21. When the world burns around you, survival isn't just about strength, it's about trust. Trust in yourself, in those who would risk everything for you, and in the bond that pulls you both through. The heat was unbearable, a living force that clawed at Noah's skin and choked the air from his lungs. The flames roared like a wild beast, their tongues licking at the sky as they devoured everything in their path. Smoke curled around him, thick and acrid, making it hard to see, hard to breathe. But none of it mattered. Not the fire, not the pain, not the danger. All that mattered was Sage. She was slumped against the fallen tree, her face pale and smudged with soot, her chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. Noah's heart clenched at the sight of her, his wolf howling in his mind, urging him forward. He crouched beside her, his hands trembling as he touched her shoulder. "Sage," he said, his voice hoarse. "Wake up. Come on, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open briefly, the amber glow of the fire reflecting in them. She looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came out. She was too weak, too close to the edge. "I've got you," Noah said, his voice firm despite the panic clawing at him. "I'm not leaving you here." Noah shifted back into his wolf, his powerful frame easily lifting Sage onto his back. Her weight was light, too light, and he could feel the fragility of her body against him. His wolf growled low, the sound a promise to protect her at all costs. The flames closed in as he turned, their heat pressing against him like a physical force. He scanned the area, his sharp eyes searching for the safest path through the inferno. The way back to the clearing was blocked, the flames too high and the ground too unstable. The only option was to head deeper into the forest toward the river. Noah's paws hit the ground with precision, his movements careful but swift as he navigated the burning landscape. The smoke was blinding, and the roar of the fire drowned out all other sounds, but he focused on the rhythm of his breathing, on the steady beat of Sage's pulse against his fur. "Keep going," his wolf urged. "She needs you." The fire seemed to have a mind of its own, its tendrils reaching out to block his path at every turn. A burning branch crashed to the ground just ahead of him, sending sparks flying. Noah skidded to a stop, his muscles coiled with tension as he calculated his next move. "I won't let you have her," he growled under his breath, as if the fire could hear him. With a burst of speed, he leapt over the fallen branch, his wolf's strength propelling them forward. The heat singed his fur, and the smoke burned his throat, but he didn't falter. He couldn't. Sage stirred slightly on his back, her weak voice barely audible over the chaos. "Noah!" The sound of her voice sent a surge of determination through him. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady. "I've got you. Just hold on." She didn't respond, but he felt her fingers curl slightly into his fur, a faint but deliberate movement that told him she was still fighting. The river was just ahead, its cool scent cutting through the acrid smoke like a lifeline. Noah pushed himself harder, his lungs burning and his legs trembling with the effort. The ground beneath him shifted dangerously, the fire consuming everything in its path, but he didn't stop. Finally, they broke through the wall of flames and reached the riverbank. Noah collapsed onto the cool, damp earth, his chest heaving as he shifted back to his human form. He gently lowered Sage to the ground, cradling her in his arms. "Sage," he said urgently, brushing her hair back from her face. "Come on, wake up. Open your eyes." Her eyelids fluttered, and she let out a weak cough, the sound both heartbreaking and relieving. She opened her eyes, her gaze unfocused but searching. When they landed on him, a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "You came for me," she whispered. Noah's throat tightened and he nodded. "Of course I did. I'll always come for you." The danger wasn't entirely over. The fire still burned behind them, its glow casting eerie shadows across the riverbank. But for now they were safe. Noah held Sage close, his arm steady despite the exhaustion that threatened to pull him under. "You scared the hell out of me," he said softly, his voice raw. "Don't ever do that again." Sage let out a weak laugh, her head resting against his chest. "I wasn't exactly planning on it." They sat there, the world around them fading into the background. The fire was a distant roar now, and the cool air of the river was a balm to their battered bodies. As Sage regained some of her strength, she looked up at Noah, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. "You didn't have to come for me," she said quietly. "You could have let someone else." "Stop," Noah interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "I couldn't let someone else. It had to be me." Her brow furrowed, confusion and vulnerability flickering across her face. Why? Noah hesitated, his heart pounding. This wasn't the time or place for confessions. But the words were there, hanging in the air between them. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you're my mate, Sage. I've known it for a long time, and I'm done pretending I don't feel it. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she was silent, her breath hitching as his words sank in. Her wolf stirred, a soft growl of agreement rumbling in the back of her mind. Noah, she began, her voice trembling. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing against her cheek. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Sage closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. The fire might have been behind them, but the emotional blaze between them was just beginning. Chapter 22. Strength isn't just about muscles or power. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice, what you'll risk to save the ones who matter most. The fire wasn't done with us. Even as the cool river soothed the worst of the heat and smoke, the flames roared on, claiming everything they touched. The forest crackled and groaned under its assault, trees swaying dangerously as their roots burned. I could feel the ground beneath us shift, the air alive with the chaos of destruction. Noah stood, his arm around me as he steadied himself. He was pale, his breath labored, but his grip on me was firm, reassuring. We need to move, he said, his voice hoarse but steady. The fire's spreading. We're not safe here. I nodded, my wolf urging me forward even as my legs protested. The adrenaline coursing through me masked the worst of my fatigue, but I knew we were both running on borrowed time. We began to move, staying close to the riverbank where the fire was less intense. The plan was simple. Follow the water until we found a safe path out. But nothing about this night had been simple. The sound of cracking would echo through the forest, sharp and sudden. I barely had time to react before a massive tree, its base consumed by fire, came crashing down. The earth trembled beneath its weight, and in the chaos, I lost sight of Noah. Noah! I shouted, panic tightening my chest. I turned to see him pinned beneath the massive trunk, his body twisted awkwardly. His face was contorted in pain, and his wolf growled weakly, its strength sapped by the ordeal. Sage, he rasped, his voice strained. Go! Get out of here! The words ignited something in me, a fierce, unrelenting defiance. No, I said, my voice firm. I'm not leaving you. He shook his head, his eyes pleading. You have to. The fire. I don't care about the fire. I snapped, dropping to my knees beside him. I'm not leaving you, Noah. Don't ask me to. The trunk was massive, its weight pressing down on him with unyielding force. I tried to lift it, but it didn't budge. My hands were shaking, my muscles screaming in protest, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Come on, I growled, my wolf pushing me forward. Move! The fire crackled closer, the heat searing against my skin, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was Noah, his shallow breaths, the pain etched into his face, the way his wolf stirred weakly as if willing me to succeed. Sage, stop, he said again, his voice softer now. You can't. Yes, I can, I said through gritted teeth. You're not giving up, Noah. Not here. Not like this. I dug my feet into the ground, my hands gripping the edge of the trunk. My wolf roared in my mind, her strength surging through me like a tidal wave. Slowly, inch by inch, the tree began to shift. Noah groaned in pain as the pressure eased, and I froze for a moment, my heart hammering. I'm sorry, I whispered. Just hold on, okay? He nodded weakly, his eyes locked on mine. I trust you, he murmured. With a final surge of strength, I lifted the trunk enough to slide it off him. The effort left me gasping, my arms trembling as I collapsed beside him. But there was no time to rest. The fire was closing in, and we were running out of options. Noah, can you stand? I asked, my voice urgent. He tried, but his legs gave out beneath him. He shook his head, frustration and pain flashing across his face. I've got you, I said, determination hardening my tone. Just hang on. I hooked my arms under his shoulders, my wolf lending me every ounce of her strength. Slowly I lifted him, his weight a challenge but not impossible. I could feel his breath against my neck, weak but steady, and it fueled me forward. You don't have to do this, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Yes, I do, I said, my voice fierce. You do the same for me. Step by step, I carried him away from the fire, the flame snapping at our heels. My legs felt like they were going to give out, my lungs burning with every breath, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Noah's life depended on it. The riverbank grew wider, the ground more stable, and finally, we reached a small clearing where the fire hadn't yet spread. I lowered him gently to the ground, collapsing beside him as exhaustion overtook me. You're insane, he said weakly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I laughed, though it sounded more like a sob. You're welcome. He reached for my hand, his fingers brushing against mine. You saved me, he said, his voice filled with something I couldn't quite name. I squeezed his hand, my own trembling. I wasn't going to lose you. The night stretched on, the fire slowly dying in the distance. We stayed there in the clearing, too exhausted to move, the silence between us heavy but comforting. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to let go of the fear, the doubt, the walls I had built around myself. Noah was alive. We were alive. And for now, that was enough. Strength isn't about standing alone, I thought, my wolf settling peacefully in the back of my mind. It's about knowing when to lean on someone else. And tonight, we leaned on each other. Chapter 23. Secrets have a way of unraveling, no matter how tightly you try to hold them. And when the truth comes out, it doesn't just reveal, it destroys. The sun rose over the packlands, its light illuminating the charred remnants of the forest. Smoke still lingered in the air, a ghostly reminder of the fire that had ravaged the territory. The pack had worked tirelessly through the night to contain the blaze, but the damage was undeniable. The once vibrant forest now stood in ruins, a scar on the land that mirrored the tension hanging over the pack. In the courtyard of the pack house, a crowd had gathered. The whispers and murmurs were electric, a mix of curiosity and outrage as the wolves waited for the alpha to speak. Noah stood at the front, his presence commanding even though his body was still recovering from the ordeal. Beside him, Joan stood with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. I stood off to the side, my arms wrapped around myself as I watched the scene unfold. My body ached, and the events of the night still played on a loop in my mind. But I was here, alive, safe, and I had Noah to thank for that. And now, the truth was about to come out. Noah's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs. Last night, the fire that nearly destroyed our territory and took the life of one of our own wasn't an accident. The crowd erupted into a wave of shocked gasps and muttered questions. Noah raised a hand, and the noise subsided. We've identified the person responsible, he continued, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. And their actions will not go unanswered. From the back of the gathering, Lyra stepped forward, her movements hesitant but defiant. Her expression was calm, but her wolf's unease radiated off her in waves. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice sharp. You can't possibly think I had anything to do with this. Joan stepped forward, holding up a small glass jar, the same kind Lyra had used to spread the fire. Its scent was unmistakable. We found this near the scene, Joan said, her voice cold. Your scent is all over it, Lyra. Don't bother denying it. The crowd turned their attention to Lyra, their expressions a mix of disbelief and anger. She raised her chin, her lips curling into a bitter smile. Of course you blame me, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. The outcast gets herself into trouble, and suddenly I'm the villain. How convenient. Noah's eyes darkened, his wolf growling softly in the back of his mind. You're not being accused without evidence, Lyra. We know what you did. We know you set that fire, and we know why. Lyra's composure cracked for a moment, her eyes flashing with fury. Why? Because I wanted to protect this pack. Protect it from someone who doesn't belong. Sage is a nobody, a stain on this pack's legacy. And you, she pointed at Noah, her voice rising. You've let her blind you. You're supposed to be our alpha, but you're acting like a lovesick fool. The words hit like a thunderclap, and the crowd erupted again, their voices a chaotic mix of shock and outrage. Noah raised his hand again, silencing them with a single commanding gesture. This isn't about Sage, he said, his voice steady but cold. This is about you, about your jealousy, your entitlement, and your willingness to endanger the lives of your packmates to satisfy your own bitterness. Lyra's wolf surged forward, her growl low and menacing. You think you can lecture me? After everything I've done for this pack? I've trained, I've fought, I've bled for this pack. While she's done nothing. Joan stepped forward, her expression icy. She saved Noah's life. She's been rebuilding herself piece by piece while you've been tearing others down. If you can't see the difference, then you don't deserve to call yourself one of us. The weight of their words finally broke through Lyra's defenses. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, she looked small, vulnerable. But then her eyes hardened, her defiance flaring once more. Fine, she said, her voice shaking but firm. Exile me. Cast me out. But don't pretend this pack is better off with her in it. Noah stepped closer, his gaze unrelenting. You've made your choice, Lyra. You betrayed this pack, and you betrayed everything we stand for. You're no longer welcome here. The finality of his words hung heavy in the air. Lyra's wolf growled, but she didn't argue. She turned on her heel and walked away, her head held high even as the pack watched her go. As the crowd dispersed, the weight of what had happened settled over me. Noah approached, his expression softening as he reached out to touch my shoulder. You okay? He asked, his voice low. I nodded, though the emotions swirling inside me were hard to put into words. I didn't expect it to end like this. It needed to, he said firmly. For the pack. For you. I looked up at him, the warmth in his eyes grounding me. Thank you, I said quietly. For everything. He smiled, a small but genuine thing. You don't have to thank me, Sage. I'll always protect you. For the first time in a long time I felt safe. Truly safe. And as the sun rose higher, casting its light over the damaged forest, I realized that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to heal. Chapter 24. Respect isn't given. It's earned through every choice, every sacrifice, and every moment you stand your ground, even when the odds are against you. The Elder's Chamber was a place of history and tradition, its stone walls etched with the stories of the pack's greatest triumphs and darkest days. I had only been here once before, years ago, when I was still too young and too naive to understand the weight this room carried. Now, as I stood in its center, all eyes on me, the weight was almost suffocating. The elders sat in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from neutral to skeptical. They were the pillars of the pack, the voices of wisdom and guidance. But they were also the gatekeepers of tradition, and I knew that many of them still saw me as an outsider. Noah stood beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. His hand brushed against mine briefly, a silent promise that I wasn't alone in this. We are here, Elder Marcus began, his deep voice echoing in the chamber, to discuss the events of the past days and their implications for the future of our pack. His sharp gaze landed on me, and I met it without flinching. Sage, he continued, his tone measured. You have been at the center of much upheaval lately. Some of it unavoidable, some of it not. But before we proceed, we would like to hear from you directly. What do you have to say for yourself? I took a deep breath, my wolf stirring inside me. She was calm, her confidence lending me strength. I know I don't come from a strong bloodline, I began, my voice steady. I know I'm not what many of you expected when you think of someone standing beside your alpha. But everything I've done, everything I've fought for, has been for this pack. I looked around the room, meeting each elder's gaze. When the rogues attacked, I stood with you. When the fire raged, I fought to protect the pack. And when one of our own betrayed us, I stayed loyal. Not because I had to, but because this pack is my family. It's the only family I have left. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My heart pounded, but I didn't let it show. I may not have been born into this pack, I continued, my voice growing stronger, but I've earned my place here. And I will keep earning it every day, if that's what it takes. The silence stretched on, the elders exchanging glances. Finally, Elder Miriam, one of the oldest and most respected among them, leaned forward. You've shown courage, she said, her tone softer than I expected, and loyalty. But those alone are not enough to lead beside our alpha. Do you truly believe you are ready for the responsibility that comes with that role? I hesitated, not because I doubted my answer, but because I wanted them to see the sincerity in my words. I'm ready to try, I said finally. I'm ready to learn, to grow, and to be the mate Noah deserves. I know I won't be perfect, but I'll never stop fighting for this pack. Noah stepped forward then, his voice cutting through the tension. She doesn't have to prove herself to me, he said firmly. I've seen her strength, her heart, and her dedication. Sage is my fated mate. That's not up for debate. His words sent a ripple through the room, the finality of them impossible to ignore. For a moment, the elders looked as if they might argue, but then Elder Marcus nodded slowly. Very well, he said, his voice heavy with authority. Sage, your actions have indeed shown a commitment to this pact that cannot be denied. You've faced challenges that would have broken others, and you've stood firm. If Noah believes in you, then we will too. Relief flooded through me, but I kept my expression steady, not wanting to show how much their approval meant. Elder Miriam smiled faintly. Welcome to the pack, Sage. Truly. As Noah and I left the chamber, the tension that had gripped me finally began to ease. The weight I'd carried for so long, the doubt, the fear of not belonging lifted, replaced by something new. Noah reached for my hand, his touch grounding me. You did it, he said softly. I looked up at him, a small smile tugging at my lips. We did it. His eyes softened, his wolf shining through for a moment. You've always belonged here, Sage. I'm just glad they finally see it, too. That evening, the pack gathered in the courtyard to celebrate. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter and warmth as the wolves came together to honor the victories of the past days. I stood beside Noah, the glow of the firelight reflecting in his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. As the night wore on, wolves came up to me, wolves who had once kept their distance, offering kind words and gestures of acceptance. Even Joan, always the first to tease, pulled me into a warm hug. About time they caught up, she said with a grin. I've always known you were one of us. By the end of the night, as the fire burned low and the pack began to disperse, I found myself standing beside Noah, looking out over the charred forest. It's going to take time to rebuild, I said, my voice quiet. He nodded, his gaze steady. We'll do it together. His words held a promise, one that went beyond the forest, beyond the pack. It was a promise of a future, of a bond that couldn't be broken. And for the first time, I believed it. Chapter 25. Some moments feel like the world stops turning, like time itself bends just for you. And in those moments, you realize that home isn't a place. It's a person. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that wrapped around you like a blanket. The stars glittered above us, scattered across the sky like shards of light, their brilliance undimmed by the charred forest around us. The pack had retreated to their homes, their laughter and celebration fading into the soft hum of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. Noah and I lingered by the edge of the clearing, the remnants of the fire pit glowing faintly behind us. The warmth of the night was comforting, but it was the presence of Noah beside me that made everything feel safe. We hadn't spoken much since the elders' decision earlier in the day. The weight of everything, Lyra's betrayal, the fire, the pack's acceptance, had settled over us like a storm finally quieted. But now, standing here with him, I felt like the calm was finally settling in. Noah broke the silence first. You did it, you know. I turned to look at him, his profile illuminated by the soft light of the moon. Did what? He glanced at me, his lips curving into a small smile. Proved them all wrong. The elders, the pack, even yourself. You showed them how strong you are. His words hit me harder than I expected, and I found myself looking away, my chest tightening. I wasn't trying to prove anything, I said quietly. I just wanted to belong. He stepped closer, his presence steady and grounding. You've always belonged, Sage. The only one who didn't see it was you. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, a soft laugh escaping me. You always know the right thing to say, don't you? Not always, he admitted, his voice lighter now. But when it comes to you, it's easy. You make it easy. We stood there for a moment, the silence between us comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. Finally, Noah reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. I looked up at him, my heart skipping a beat at the warmth in his eyes. "You've been through so much," he said softly. "And yet you're still standing, still fighting. Do you know how incredible that is?" I shook my head, the words catching in my throat. "I'm not as strong as you think, Noah. I was so scared during the fire. If it weren't for you, I don't think I would have made it." He tilted his head, his expression gentle but firm. "You saved me, Sage. You didn't hesitate, didn't falter. That's strength. And whether you see it or not, it's what makes you you." His hand found mine then, his fingers lacing through mine with a tenderness that sent warmth flooding through me. I looked down at our joined hands, my wolf stirring softly in the back of my mind. She was quiet but content, her presence a steady hum that mirrored my own feelings. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "The pack being your mate, it's so much." Noah's grip on my hand tightened slightly, his voice steady. "You don't have to be ready all at once. We'll take it one step at a time. Together." I looked up at him then, his words sinking deep into my heart. There was no pressure in his gaze, no expectation, just a quiet promise. A promise that I didn't have to face any of this alone. The stars seemed to shine brighter as he reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle, his fingers lingering for a moment before trailing down to cup my cheek. I leaned into his hand instinctively, my eyes closing as I let myself feel the warmth of him. "You mean so much to me, Sage," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion. "More than I think I even realized until now. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if I have to." My breath caught, and I opened my eyes to find him watching me, his gaze steady and full of something I couldn't quite name, but I felt it, deep in my bones. "You already have," I said softly, my voice trembling. The space between us seemed to disappear as he leaned in, his forehead resting gently against mine. The world around us faded, the charred forest, the stars, everything, until it was just us. I could feel his breath against my lips, his closeness a comfort I hadn't realized I craved. "Sage," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "You're my mate, my home, and nothing will ever change that." The words broke something open inside me, and before I could stop myself, I closed the distance between us, my lips brushing against his in a kiss that was soft and tentative but full of everything I couldn't say. He responded immediately, his arms wrapping around me as he pulled me closer. The kiss deepened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the fear and doubt melted away, replaced by a warmth that filled every corner of my being. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine again, both of us breathing hard but smiling. "I guess this is the part where we figure out what happens next," I said, my voice shaky but light. Noah chuckled, his thumb brushing against my cheek. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's all that matters." As we stood there under the stars, the weight of the past few days seemed to lift, replaced by something new, something stronger. And for the first time, I let myself believe that this, Noah, the pack, this bond we shared could be my home. Because maybe home wasn't a place, maybe it was a person, and Noah was mine. Chapter 26. A pack is only as strong as its bonds, as resilient as its leaders. And now, I wasn't just a part of it, I was standing at the forefront beside him. The sun was just beginning to rise over the pack lands, its golden rays painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The morning air carried the faint chill of dawn, a quiet calm that belied the tension simmering beneath the surface. The pack was awake and bustling, preparing for what was to come. The rogues weren't going to stop. That much was clear. The attack on the eastern border, the calculated ambushes, the fire, it was all part of a larger plan. And now, the pack had to be ready. We had to be ready. I stood near the training grounds, watching as wolves of all ranks sparred and strategized. Joan barked orders, her voice sharp but encouraging, while Noah moved between groups, his presence commanding yet steady. He had a way of inspiring loyalty with just a glance, and as I watched him, I felt a surge of pride and something deeper. This was my pack now. These were my people. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. Noah approached me, his expression calm but focused. His dark eyes scanned my face, softening slightly as they met mine. How are you holding up? He asked, his voice low. I smiled faintly, my hands brushing against the hem of my jacket. I'm okay. Just trying to take it all in. He nodded, his gaze shifting to the training grounds. It's a lot, but you're handling it. I glanced at him, my chest tightening at the quiet confidence in his voice. I don't want to let you down, I admitted. He turned back to me, his hand reaching out to touch my arm. You could never let me down, Sage. You've already proven yourself over and over. The pack sees it. I see it. His words were a balm to the lingering doubt that still whispered in the back of my mind. I nodded, taking a deep breath. What's the plan for today? Noah gestured toward the far side of the training grounds, where the betas were gathered around a large map spread out on a table. We're finalizing patrol routes and defense strategies. The rogues are regrouping, and we need to be ready for anything. I followed him as he walked toward the table, my steps falling into rhythm with his. The betas looked up as we approached, their expressions a mix of respect and determination. Sage, one of them said, nodding in acknowledgement. Glad you're here. The simple words sent a flicker of warmth through me. It wasn't long ago that I would have been ignored, or worse, dismissed outright. But now, standing beside Noah, I felt their acceptance. It was a tentative thing, fragile and new, but it was there. Joan joined us, her sharp eyes scanning the map. We need to focus on the northern border, she said, tapping a spot on the map with her finger. That's where they'll hit next. It's the least fortified, and they know it. Noah nodded. Agreed. We'll rotate the patrols to cover more ground. Sage, I want you with Joan on the first patrol. I blinked, surprised. You want me out there? You're ready, he said simply. And the pack needs to see it. The patrol began later that afternoon, the air tense with anticipation. Joan led the group, her movements confident and precise as she directed the wolves into formation. I stayed close to her, my senses sharp as I scanned the forest for any signs of movement. The northern border was quiet, the stillness almost unnerving. The trees stood tall and unyielding, their shadows stretching across the ground like silent sentinels. My wolf stirred inside me, her instincts on high alert. You're doing great, Joan said quietly, her voice breaking the silence. Just keep your head up and trust your instincts. I nodded, my grip tightening on the hilt of the dagger strapped to my side. Do you think they'll come today? Joan shrugged, her expression unreadable. Hard to say, but if they do, we'll be ready. By the time we returned to the pack house, the sun was beginning to set, casting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The patrol had been uneventful, but the tension in the air hadn't eased. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the rogues made their next move. Noah was waiting for us when we arrived, his gaze sweeping over the group before landing on me. His expression softened, and he stepped forward, his hand brushing against mine as we walked side by side toward the fire pit. How is it? He asked. Quiet, I said. Too quiet. He nodded, his jaw tightening. They're testing us, trying to keep us on edge. It's working, I admitted, my voice low. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. Don't let them get to you. They want us to be scared, to hesitate. But we're stronger than that. You're stronger than that. That evening, as the pack gathered around the fire, I sat beside Noah, his presence a steady comfort. The pack was talking, strategizing, but my mind kept drifting to the future, to what lay ahead. Noah must have sensed my unease because he leaned closer, his voice low. You're thinking too much. I huffed a quiet laugh, glancing at him. You think? He smiled, his hand resting briefly on mine. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this, Sage. You never will be. His words settled over me like a blanket, the warmth of them chasing away the lingering chill of doubt. I looked around at the pack, at the wolves who had become my family, and for the first time, I felt truly ready. As the fire burned low and the stars began to emerge, I leaned into Noah's side, his arm wrapping around me. The rogue threat loomed on the horizon, but for now we were here, together. And that was enough. We'll fight, we'll endure, and we'll win. Because this is my pack now, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it. Chapter 27. The future is uncertain, but when you stand together, there's no storm you can't weather, no enemy you can't face. The strength of a pack isn't in its numbers, it's in its unity. The sky was heavy with the weight of dawn, a muted gray that promised rain but hadn't yet delivered. The forest stretched endlessly around the packlands, scarred but resilient, much like the wolves who called it home. The air hummed with an unspoken energy as the pack gathered in the courtyard, their faces a mix of determination and resolve. Noah stood at the forefront, his presence commanding but calm. Beside him, I stood tall, the weight of my new role settling on my shoulders like a second skin. And on my other side, Joan, ever the steady force, stood with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. The three of us, a team forged in fire and bound by trust. Noah's voice rang out, cutting through the early morning quiet. We've been tested by rogues, by betrayal, by fire, and we've come through stronger. But our fight isn't over. The rogues will come again, and when they do, we'll be ready. The pack let out a collective growl of agreement, their energy buzzing in the air like a current. I could feel their loyalty, their trust, and it sent a rush of warmth through me. These wolves weren't just my packmates, they were my family. Noah glanced at me, his dark eyes filled with quiet pride. He stepped back slightly, giving me the space to speak. My chest tightened for a moment, but then Joan nudged me gently with her elbow, her smirk reassuring. Go on, she murmured. You've got this. I nodded, taking a deep breath before stepping forward. The weight of their gazes was daunting, but my wolf stirred inside me, her strength steadying my nerves. I know I'm new to this role, I began, my voice strong despite the tremble in my chest. I know some of you doubted me, and I don't blame you. But I want you to know that I will fight for this pack with everything I have. This is my home, and all of you are my family. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. The murmurs of approval that rippled through the crowd were subtle but meaningful. I could see it in their faces. The beginnings of trust, the acceptance I had fought so hard to earn. Joan stepped forward next, her usual smirk softened by the seriousness of the moment. All right, enough of the mushy stuff, she said, her tone light but commanding. We've got work to do. Patrol rotations, border reinforcements, and let's not forget, making sure the rogues don't catch us napping again. The pack chuckled, the tension easing slightly. That was Joan's gift, her ability to bring levity even in the darkest moments. Noah nodded, his expression thoughtful. We'll divide into teams and cover every vulnerable point. No one patrols alone, and no one takes unnecessary risks. He glanced at me and Joan, his gaze steady. We lead by example. Together. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Wolves moved with purpose, their energy focused as they fortified the borders and scouted the forest. Joan was everywhere at once, barking orders and keeping morale high. Noah split his time between the patrols and the pack house, his presence a constant reminder of the strength we all drew from him. I found myself in the heart of it all, working alongside wolves who had once kept their distance but now treated me like one of their own. The transformation was subtle but profound, and it filled me with a sense of belonging I hadn't realized I was still searching for. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the pack gathered once more around the fire pit. The atmosphere was quieter now, the frenetic energy of the day, giving way to a calm resolve. Noah stood at the center, his arm brushing against mine as he addressed the pack. We've done everything we can to prepare. Now we wait. But remember this, we're not just a pack, we're a family. And as long as we stand together, there's nothing we can't overcome. The pack howled in unison, the sound echoing through the night like a battle cry. It sent a shiver down my spine, my wolf surging with pride. Later, as the fire burned low and the pack began to disperse, I stood with Noah and Joan at the edge of the clearing. The three of us were quiet, the weight of the day settling over us. Joan was the first to break the silence, her voice teasing but warm. Well, if the rogues show up tomorrow, at least we'll be ready to give them hell. Noah chuckled, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. That's the plan. Joan turned to me, her grin softening. And you, Sage? Ready to show the world what you're made of? I smiled, the warmth of their support steadying me. More than ready. As Joan left to oversee the final patrols, Noah and I lingered, the forest stretching out before us like an endless promise. He turned to me, his dark eyes filled with a quiet intensity. You did good today, he said softly. I looked up at him, my heart swelling. So did you. He smiled, his hand brushing against mine. We'll get through this, Sage. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. I nodded, my wolf stirring with quiet agreement. Together. And as the stars began to emerge, their light cutting through the darkness, I knew that no matter what the future held, we were ready. Because we weren't just a pack, we were a family.
Like, share and subscribe to show the author support and love.